Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Evgeni.
Hi, I am Windrunner on the forums.
God damn it. These two, David and Evgeni give me such crap that's like, oh, I can't believe I'm second, David said, as I always have done this. And so I try and switch it up to appease things. Just derailed again. Okay, fine.
I am Argent.
Also joining us is David. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, I am actually Windrunner, and I am aware that Eric has inverted his normal order, and I suspected he would do it to try to mess with me because he was being sneaky about it. So
yeah, you just seem so surprised all the time. I just want to give people what they want, okay? We all know Evgeni wants to be first, and you kept being surprised. So
I enjoy it's a pleasant surprise, because then I can be like, haha.
Great. Anyone got any show and tell?
Yeah, I do have. So
don't pick up that water bottle, Evgeni. I swear to God.
It was like, is it gonna be whiskey?
Don't pick up.
I do. There was in a recent episode we had an informal bingo. Because we had a very, very deranged, all over the place conversation, and we had
People
listeners.
loved it. People loved it.
I think it was a lot of fun.
It was one of the best episodes, I think.
But someone was notably upset that they didn't get bingo because I didn't do alcohol show and tell.
Okay, all right, fair. That is true. Multiple people did say this for sure. Yes,
we are drinking. This looks like a lot, but that's because there's a huge chunk of ice in there.
I mean,
what we are drinking today is some coffee whiskey.
Oh,
that I got.
What is the little picture on it? It looks like a panda, but I don't think
what?
Right.
It is a naked
really
woman riding a horse.
Okay, that's what I thought
so
it
not
was.
A panda. Okay. I still had the comment sidebar open, so it was even extra compressed. I couldn't really see.
We are drinking Heady Bella, which was grounded in the Midwest. The whiskey, not Bella herself.
Good.
It's a rye whiskey that was soaked in espresso, strained and finished with maple syrup. It is
cool.
Remarkable. So I don't love this. It's okay, but I don't love it. It's remarkable how strong of a whiskey flavor and how strong of a coffee flavor you get out of it. And they are like, neither is really messing up or diluting the other. Which would happen if you just poured coffee and then like dumped some whiskey in there. So that's my show and tell for today.
Cool. David, do you have any show and tell?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I never do.
Okay. I have some show and tell. I have this. I have our Stabby Award from long ago in 2020.
What are Stabby Awards, Eric?
It was r/fantasy. We got the best site award, and so the awards took a while to get here, but we got
it happens because they're like self-funded, so I think it takes a little time to get the money together.
Yeah,
we really do appreciate that.
Oh, also the edges are not sharp at all, so that's nice.
Well, that's probably for the best.
That is probably for the best.
And these are community voted, right?
Yeah, they're community voted. So thank you all for voting.
Blue. Yeah, but it was very exciting.
Thank you for voting for us 3 years ago. So nice. And thank you all for listening. Okay, so today, friends, we are getting back to some Lost Metal stuff. I know it's been a while.
We still have Rhythm of War topics, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, there are. I don't. We might just need to wait till Starlight 5.
those are back burner topics, is how I would put some of them. They were things that if we were needing to make episodes out of,
there was only one about like the sibling. There, nothing important happened in Rhythm of War on the sibling.
That's a major one that we just haven't done. And I assume
that was scheduling issues, and we're just okay. Look, we can't do everything. It's fine. But this one has always been on our list. We're talking about Hemalurgy. And we're going to focus in. This is going to be a very Lost Metal heavy episode on Hemalurgy. And but we're going to talk about some other Era 2 Hemalurgy stuff as well. We actually haven't done a dedicated Hemalurgy episode except the Hemalurgy chart back in 2018, which is like 5 years ago now.
That's wild that we've had the chart for that long, honestly.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my number one for a poster for it, So I guess I'll be waiting.
Hang in there.
Hang in there.
That's gonna be hard to get.
So let's talk about Hemalurgy. And are we going to talk for an hour about the Ars Arcanum in this episode from the Lost Metal? Probably. Yeah, that's going to be most of the episode, but it's really crazy, actually. And as soon as we read it, we're like, well, this is on the list of episodes. Like, we got this. Evgeni, why don't you recap us some Hemalurgy fundamentals? What is Hemalurgy?
Hemalurgy is a magic system that Brendan once thought he was going to call sanguimancy.
That's true. That is true.
And that thankfully didn't happen.
Oof.
It kind of ruins magic system, Scadrian magic system. But it's universal in the sense that anyone can do it anywhere. It just kind of requires intent. Intent
to destroy, presumably. Ruinous intent.
Presumably, yeah. And it allows you to steal attributes, traits, powers from other people's, to rip pieces from other people's souls, and with those pieces come benefits. Assuming you get the right piece, presumably you can just like rip something. Or
some detriments, potentially, depending on how you look at it.
Sure. And then just graft that onto your own soul and reap the benefit. And the donor usually, historically and traditionally, kicks the bucket. But there appear to be some recent developments where that is not the case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you use different metals to steal different things. And atium.
Pure
atium, pure god metals seem to be doing especially special stuff.
Must be refined.
Might steal destiny.
Maybe destiny.
That's another metal. That's not atium.
That's true.
Maybe destiny.
Well, yeah, we'll never get into that. That will never be explained.
Go back to that Hemalurgy episode where we just maybe destinies on there. There's actually two, because we split episodes rather than having 3-hour episodes, but now we don't do that.
We don't do that, no.
But
we give it to you raw.
So basically, like, you can kill someone with a spike if you get it in the right spot, and you can become an allomancer. You can become a ferrochemist. You can also become a Koloss if you do the right things. And then Khandra are also Hemalurgic construct, which is weird. And Khandra blessings are weird and unusual.
Although you don't like create Khandra by like stabbing people and then putting, like, you have to start with a baseline Mistwraith, presumably.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I don't think you can start with a baseline human. And
no. I do not believe you can.
No, I don't think so.
Separate species.
But and also, there's a lot of weirdness with the blessings. I don't know how much we want to get into it.
Yeah, we could talk about the blessings, but yeah, whatever.
they have to be special spikes. We don't know how special they are.
Yeah, the Khandra can't just get the right metals and stab people. Apparently,
you can't get more of them for some. I don't know.
Lord Ruler, he knew how to do it.
When is that going to come up? Who knows? But
yeah,
sure.
I mean, honestly, I feel like it'd be more interesting if they could do it, and they're just like, well, like, we could make more of ourselves, but it would be like a direct cost of killing other people, you know? Well, like, that would be kind of an interesting moral conflict for them a little bit. But they
get released later, so
and they're all dying now of like old age / sadness.
Well,
But anyway, I think another important thing to note about Hemalurgy is that the person who receives a spike, there is usually a weakness that is created at that point that allows forces to more easily access their soul or take control of them in many cases. And this effect is compounded by having additional spikes. So if you have one, maybe it's just that Ruin can whisper in your ear or make you see something. But if you have 12, you're a puppet. So like that, and like even your like even like the way you think can be nearly controlled. And you have to kind of hide parts of what you're planning, like Marsh did when he was planning to
Yep.
work against Ruin.
And that hemalurgic flaw reminds me a lot of like the cracks in the soul with like surge binding and stuff.
Yep.
But certainly this is the most dramatic use of a shard just directly like, yeah, no, you're mine now, right? Like this is where we see it in Mist.
Mhm.
Oh, full Cosmere spoilers, but especially Mistborn spoilers.
Certainly.
Like heavy Mistborn spoilers.
And I would say in the case of the spread, it seems to me like the Nahel bond is like protective in that way.
Sure.
So it doesn't, in the same way that Ruin exploits like that sort of flaws. The Spren bond is helpful in preventing things like that.
Like it fills in the cracks, I guess.
Yeah. I think the metaphorically, like the way
I think the Spren bond is more like it's less filling the gaps and more like melding of souls.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And, which has the side effect of like filling the cracks, right? But you're filling the cracks with like someone else's soul, essentially. Yep. I did want to address something before we even get into discussing the episode proper.
Let's talk about Spren bonds, actually.
No, not about Spren bond. It's about Hemalurgy, actually.
Okay.
The idea of like essentially injecting your soul with like too much ruin. Well, so let's back up.
Okay.
You receive a lot of spikes, right? You get to the level of like Inquisitors and stuff. And that allows Ruin to have like just complete access to your entire being, right? Complete mind control, mind reading, things like that. Or at least influencing the mind.
Yeah.
That got me thinking, so is that a product of, well, there's now a lot of Ruin in your soul, right? And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, no.
No, because I don't think you've got a lot of... Are you talking about after Ruin's power has like metaphorically kind of like gone through this gap, you've got a lot of Ruin in your soul, or you've got a lot of Ruin in your soul because you've got a lot of spikes?
The latter.
I think, but it's oftentimes not really Ruin's power. You know, it's some preservation that's stolen or something like that.
Yep.
I don't
you're stealing other people's power. Well, I bring it up because it got me thinking about cognitive shadows who are like made up entirely of a specific type of investiture.
Mm-hmm.
And like the way they change over time and they're like, and they are influenced by the power. So I thought maybe something similar is going on here in that someone is being changed because of like the composition of their soul is changed. But no, probably something else going on.
I think it's just spiritual damage, right? I feel like this hemalurgic flaw that is put into you could be done by something else that directly like harms spiritual aspects in some way, right? I feel like that's more what's happening, right? Because one of the interesting things with hemalurgy is it doesn't really seem like the spikes aren't like super highly invested, so to speak. Right? Like you're doing, Brandon's called it like spiritual surgery, right? Where you're like putting the thing in the right place. It's not like they're absurdly powerful spikes. It's just like we're putting a bit of power in the right spot, and that like makes the right pathway to let you do a thing, kind of.
Yeah. And I think you can strengthen it by, you know, charging it repeatedly, potentially. I'm sure there's probably like some sort of like fall off to that, but they in my mind are not like, it's not like a spike is like it's charged as Nightblood. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
In fact, I think there's a word of Brandon that talks about how invested spikes are.
My recollection was low.
And they are pretty low. Certainly lower than like a full metal mind.
Or like a shard blade, like, you know, obviously.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can sometimes kind of push on spikes with Durlumin, for instance.
Yep.
I mean, you can do it with metal mines as well, but I view those as being probably not that dissimilar.
Yeah, I don't think it's that dissimilar, like on pure investiture level.
Yeah. Like with a shard blade being like a full class above in terms of how invested it would be in my mind. But
I don't mean to get on a big tangent, but I don't think that you can, like, if you use a spike to spike out an ability, I don't think you can spike out an ability with that same spike again.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that I feel like that's a thing that's been talked about. I would have to
Really?
go and like comb through Hero of Ages, but I'm
feel
pretty
like
sure
it's like the identity of it. Like you can't like
that's
there's
relatively well, maybe now, but that's a relatively new problem with spikes. Is identity creating an issue, as we'll discuss. You know, like that was not.
I think that's different. I think this is a classic investiture interferes with investiture.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
type of thing.
Okay. Well, I will. We'll come back to this if I find evidence. I will find it, but I believe that there is evidence that you can charge a spike multiple times.
Yeah, like I don't know if that's the case. Like, because definitely we usually see spikes. Oh, the earring Waxcott is just like a very old spike that is just slightly charged now, right? Oh,
For
and
sure.
one thing to note: spikes, if they're outside, like decay, right? We'll talk about hemalurgic decay. Don't worry, we have things to say based off that Ars Arcanum. So let's talk about the first really crazy thing that we got with hemalurgy in the Lost Metal, and so this is Lost Metal Chapter 47, where Marasi and the Ghost Bloods, they're infiltrating, and we see an experiment that Entrone is doing, and they are able to partially charge a spike. 5% invested. We'll talk about that.
Put a bit on that.
I'll put a spike in that, actually. A really thin spike. And it takes the latent, like, ruin and preservation and, like, charges it just a little bit. And they apparently can reuse that spike to theoretically use it to make an Allomancer or something.
So, one point I will make, and this point is if we're reusing the spike repeatedly, that is the same thing as recharging a spike with multiple ability, like you using a spike again and charging it repeatedly off of someone. You know what I mean? Like if you're using this pin-sized spike and you're running it through 20 people to get it as charged as a full spike. Is that not the same thing?
That is true, with the key difference that the spike itself is not stealing a specific ability. It seemed to be just like skimming off the top and like grabbing investiture.
And it seemed like it was preservation specifically, if we want to read the passage. But
yes, that's true.
I do have one quick point because I did find what I was looking for.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
And you can interpret this how you want to.
Okay.
But this is from Hero of Ages, chapter 42, epigraphs.
Ooh.
They're talking about the Colossus and the Lord Ruler's miscalculation about how he thought they would rapidly go extinct, but they started reusing their spikes.
Sure.
And he says, they then no longer required a fresh supply of spikes. I often wonder what effect the constant reuse of spikes had in their population. A spike can only hold so much of a hemalurgic charge, so they could not create spikes that granted infinite strength, no matter how many people those spikes killed and drew power from.
Oh, okay. That's
all right.
That's all right. Yeah, that's absolutely the plain reading of that.
There's just so many like little minute details that say they dropped it about hemalurgy in the book that sometimes it's hard to remember all of them.
Well, it's also for us, it's been a bit since we did that. So the Hero of Ages epigraphs are really like top tier spice, like that's some good stuff. Let's talk about Vin attuning to the well. How about that?
I remember not talk about that.
That was. I'm not a skip aheader in a book, but that was the only thing I was doing, and I was having to stop myself as I kept skipping ahead to see what the next epigraph was. Eventually, you're going to see something you don't want to see. Stop doing this.
Yeah. So, that's really interesting. That does make me wonder if like you can only do it with that latent preservation. Because just to recap, there are spikes that steal allomantic and ferrochemical abilities. And then there's spikes that steal like attributes, like physical strength. And that's what helps make the Colossus. They're taking that preservation. And because you're like using that preservation, that like really warps your body. Getting spikes like that.
So, those seem to be the primary spikes that they use to do horrific like spiritual surgery stuff. Like the other spikes, like the power spikes twist your body in some ways, like getting a spike through your eye changes your brain, but like from my understanding, I don't think you're creating like a hemalurgic chimera with an iron pushing spike.
No.
You know, like
I wonder if like it's just those spikes you can spike more power out of to like fill more of, just because you're taking that part of preservation, or like would identity like prevent you from just doing that all the time, whereas maybe specific abilities you can't really do that necessarily.
But okay, here's my argument is that identity is like, I think, at least in our model of it that we've constructed, which may or may not bear any resemblance to what Brandon has in mind, if he's even given it this much thought. Oh, that's the caveat. But like, is that it's like an attribute that exists like everywhere in your soul. Like it's not discrete. Like it's not your identity. It's an organ that exists here. Like if you pull off my spiritual arm, it's still got my identity, and so do I.
Right.
And so if you are stealing an organ, which is AKA, your steel sight and steel pushing, it's got your identity. But if you're just stealing mass investiture out of me, like a human attribute, that's still got my identity.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so if you're
for sure.
charging it off multiple, those two things do not, if you can recharge a spike with a human attribute many times and it does not present an identity challenge, I don't see why the power would. Because it's just a power.
Yeah, maybe it would only work if you stole the exact same power. Because like I do think,
certainly. No, you can't like make a spike that gives you at least
like that would definitely
current
interfere.
knowledge, like tin and pewter. Like you don't have to be two spikes.
And the same way you can't make a spike that steals like strength and emotional fortitude.
Yeah, you have to choose.
And I think, God, that's just so interesting. Like, maybe it's just hard to get like two Seekers to kill, but like I feel like the Inquisitors in the Final Empire time would be like, "Hey, we got these two Seekers. Let's just double up on the spike." But maybe it's also possible that like stealing an ability just like 100%s it, right? And then like as it decays, maybe you could charge it a little more. Like there's a lot.
Or
of things
there are diminishing returns.
Yeah,
like why
probably
with many abilities it feels more beneficial that you would have two people that have a reasonable strength in a certain ability than one person who is like extra strong in that one ability.
Sorry, there was some extra context there. If you were spiking it into someone who wasn't a seeker, you might want double seeking to like be able to have them pierce Coppercloud. So that's the one situation where that could be useful potentially.
I could see them maybe doing that, but in my mind, like the spikes were in such limited supply, and they were already recruiting seekers primarily, that I feel like the few who didn't have it, they were really like, "Oh, we're better off." Just like not every scum misting is going to have a Coppercloud anyway. So like there's still value to having regular seeking abilities as an Inquisitor, even if you're not able to do that awesome trick. Like that could be a more maybe the Upper Inquisitors are like, nah, like that's my thing. Like, we're not gonna, it's an authority thing or like a rank thing.
Anyway, this is a fun path that we went down that I didn't expect we'd go down about like doing that. But that does somewhat indicate, I think, that like Wax's earring spike could be recharged in some manner, potentially. Mm-hmm. Like that is possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that specific one has been.
No, I don't. Yes. I definitely do not think it has. But I'm just saying, like, that's theoretically possible, which before this conversation, I definitely thought was not true. So good catch on that epigraph. Nice. But you are right. In this chapter 47 section, they are just like, fully investing just takes between 20 and 30 people. And they don't really note any issue with that. Maybe the specific methodology of where they're spiking it helps to avoid if there are any identity issues potentially. I don't know. Or maybe it's just a non-issue. It could be a non-issue. That's fine. So it's just interesting.
It definitely is.
It's very interesting because they're stealing this extra bit of preservation. The percentage you get depends on the person. We think it might have to do with how likely they were genetically to be metalborn, but they don't need that extra if the powers didn't manifest in them. It's vestigial. So to me, that is the thing that the mists were encouraging when they were mist snapping. Like that's the piece that they were pushing upward into full, into full like Mistbornhood. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And just to remind everyone, Ruin and Preservation created Scadrial and all of its people. And they started off as an equal split between Ruin and Preservation. And then Preservation added a little bit more of himself. So there's more Preservation than Ruin in each person.
They give sapience. Well, Brandon uses sentience, but I think he meant sapience. But whatever.
Yeah. And I would say that removing even though we know that the traditional spiking was like scarring enough that like it really killed you and your soul was heavily damaged, I don't think that like that little bit of extra preservation that maybe becomes a misting or that maybe makes me a misting or maybe doesn't. I still think there's more left of them, that there's more preservation in them than Ruin, even after the spike has been
absolutely
removed, in my opinion.
For sure.
I think there'd be consequences if they had lost that bit, since it was so explicit that there needed to be more preservation for them.
And it's probably, it's definitely less of a reduction than like what we see with the Drabs.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah. Or maybe like comparable, but like definitely not like Brandon has talked in the past about, there's so many ways in the Cosmere to like kind of save people that like, okay, somebody gets spiked and you through some extraordinary method, like do physically keep them alive. How would they be? And he like his answer has always been like, kind of like just stunted, just
really
like so
bad
damage. And so I don't think that we're seeing anything like that with these people, like they're in pretty good shape, even though it's been traumatic.
I don't know if we need to, take the set at their word. Like it's definitely possible that there are effects that they're like, they're fine. It's like, okay, maybe not, but
And like, if you like listen to this, like when they're talking about, indeed, they're talking about this process that Edwarn was onto about making the spike. And they say, indeed, we refined it. The process involves a very thin spike, my Lord Mayor, and all did the right mindset. Mindset, he asked. You need to know what you're doing and why, the Roman explained. It helps to whisper a command as you work, though we find it isn't strictly necessary. Trauma on the part of the subject is helpful as well. Like this is not like an ethical thing that's happening here.
No, absolutely not.
That is very much just like,
Well, okay, can we just talk about that thing that you just read? Because that's super interesting. One, the trauma aspect reminds me how Ruin can talk to like mentally unstable people, right? Like that is just inherently easier for Ruin to do. I don't know if that's directly related here, but it's at least a somewhat interesting parallel, I think. Like Vin's mom didn't have a spike, right? Remember?
Yeah, she did not. Or like the guy who tried to spike a lend in Phaedric City.
Yeah.
Or
so like that's not required. So that trauma aspect is interesting. Obviously, the mindset, that's just intent stuff.
That's intent,
right? And so with Hemalurgy, you can't just randomly spike someone. They have to be thinking in the right way, and it's so interesting that they're whispering a command. So you can have the right mindset, and you don't need the command, but the command can be helpful to, like, I guess, get you into the right mindset. That's kind of how this reads.
Which kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I found the thing that I was looking for.
Okay.
Ironically, from our previous interview
Fantastic.
with Brandon.
We have
a question from you, Eric.
Oh, yeah. This checks out that I don't remember the specifics. This really does check out.
We don't need to read the whole thing, although maybe it's useful. But you ask about intent and command, because that was soon after Dawn Shard, right? And the bit that I was looking for is how Brandon explains, well, the intent is larger and more complicated, and the command is kind of clunky sometimes, but the magic can grasp the intent, not just the command, depending on the magic system and how good you are and things like that. The words are there to focus the intent.
Okay, sure.
And so what we are seeing here in the Lost Metal is, yes, if you can have the right mindset, you don't need a command. You just do the thing, right?
Sure.
I think that's exactly right.
Yes. I think the same way Ninth Heightening allows commandless awakening, right? You have so much investiture, you have a complex enough framework that you can just awaken without a command.
Yeah.
But if you cannot get there, then the command is it's a crutch.
Yeah.
It's honestly interesting how we think about Awakening as being like this big command, like, you know, magic system, when it actually has like some of the most limited commands where you have to keep, like, you know, you are required to speak it for so long, whereas in other places you might not need to.
And it has to be in your native tongue, or
Yeah.
at least usually has to be like.
But also like the command's only one part of it. Like you have the really complex visualization, not just the words and stuff. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, but I definitely think that I'm curious what command they're whispering to themselves here, like specifically. But I think it's definitely the thing that probably people who just have a little bit more trouble visualizing what they want and knowing what they want need it when they're first learning how to do it.
Just kill him to get you in that room.
It's like get that little bit of preservation. Like
get it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting.
So they're taking what is essentially a big needle, right? That's how we were imagining this. And they're just driving that through a number of people and like getting a little bit of investiture. It's not a specific power, it's just they're just investing that a little bit.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then eventually you end up with enough power that presumably when you, I was going to say impale, but that's not exactly the right word. When you stab someone with that needle spike in the right place, this additional investment kind of molds itself to the soul and gives you a power, or like enhances a piece of. How do you think that works?
Well, so you just saying that reminded me that like it's not just the power, right? Like that's what they're talking about later, where Intron's like, "Hey, can you make allomancers?" No, we think we need to code this in some way to give a specific metallic art blessing. So in other words, what this means is that this spike, even when it's fully charged, is just like it's blank. I wanted to say pure, but you know, the pure might be a dangerous
pure ruin, maybe. But no, you're totally right, Eric. I agree.
So like in other words, you can't just take a spike, put it in the right bind point, and have that grant the ability. The spike needs to be invested in the specific way, right?
That makes sense.
I think that's the coding that they're talking about to like color the spike to like be, hey, this is allomantic bronze or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think about it as being like unstructured at this point, and then they do something to it in that way. I do think though there's a brief mention. It's kind of interesting that sometimes when they spike somebody with it, they do briefly get a power. And I wonder if it has something to do with like, okay, you know, you put the spike through 30 people, and it so happened that like half of them would have been steel pushers had they been Mistborn. You know, so it's got like a little bit of maybe like a lean, but it's not enough to like really snap into focus as one power. It's just kind of
that's
totally
exactly
that.
how it's literally the next sentence.
It's literally the next sentence.
We think the passages give a lot of information that we come to independently. Yeah,
we think we need to code this in some way to give a specific metallic art blessing. We're working on that. We've had some few gain a power for a short time using one of these spikes, but it gives out soon after, right?
Look, I've highlighted the important parts, and like the non-highlighted parts, no recollection.
But so I think this is exactly what's going on here, right? Some people, like people on Scadrial, debatable whether that is universal in the Cosmere, but people on Scadrial have tendency, or some of them have tendency towards one like expression of the metallic arts or other, right? Some might be coin shots, some might be tin eyes. And so it may be that by investing them a little bit more, you are doing something similar to what the Mists were doing.
Yeah, although the Mists were obviously knew exactly how to code the ability, so to speak, right?
Yeah, it's weird. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I'm curious.
Sure.
So the Mists weren't investing people.
No,
right?
They were.
They were
actually. Okay, so it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, they're boosting it. Yep.
There's things that the Mists were actually boosting people. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, then exactly the same thing, right? You have this latent potential to be a coin shot. You just need a little bit of extra juice for that to like get you over the threshold.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And One thing that a minor detail that I was curious about was when they're talking about trauma on the part of the subject being helpful.
Yeah.
It is to me reminiscent of the trauma of snapping, which we don't know if that's still a thing. But then there's also the side of it where we're like, okay, potentially this is happening with ferrochemical abilities as well, and that's not necessarily correlated with trauma.
Okay, so the snapping aspect is really interesting, right? Because if anything, I would say that would matter in the recipient of the final spike and not who you're spiking that bit of investiture out of, right?
Oh, I didn't think of it that way, but
well, because
because
that's the person gaining the ability, right? So I would have assumed that, but you are right. Snapping definitely has that trauma component for sure.
So I think you can make the argument either way. I think you can make the argument of, if I am one of these set scientists and I am trying to get investiture out of someone, maybe it's easier if that someone is traumatized at the moment and their soul is like
damaged,
maybe not cracked, but like a little bit unstable at the moment.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Ooh, that's interesting. And the way I was thinking about it more is even before you've snapped, like something changes in your soul. You know what I mean? Like before you can't do something, and afterwards you can. And after you're traumatized, like you're in some way reformed a little bit. Like you got to, like, I don't know if you grow, but something changes there. And so I could see like maybe something similar happens with these people, even though the fact is that they didn't become mistings, they've still experienced some sort of trauma, and in that way there's a little more there, or something else has changed. But
the weird thing is that Sazed changed snapping and we have no details, and so in Era 2
Thanks,
it's like
Brandon.
No
Thanks,
details.
Yeah.
The Colossus be true. Who knows?
Presumably it's somehow less traumatic because that checks out.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
I feel like that's probably what it is. It's just that you don't need to beat your child, but like, you know, maybe it's like, oh, I fell off my bike and it was like a big moment for me, and then, you know, that's enough or something like that. But
like, how mechanically does that work though? Like what? Like
idea.
That's the thing.
Maybe just like lowering the threshold for like the magnitude of the experience. Right, because we also have either a word of Brandon or an annotation that like happy emotions can also snap a person. They're just very much less likely, right?
Yep.
And so it's about like presumably every experience that you have has an impact on your soul in some capacity. It might be very minor, but like the soul is a part of you. It's experiencing things alongside you. And so very dramatic experiences in either end of the spectrum can have a larger impact on your soul. And if you have kind of the predisposition to be a certain kind of misting, say a coin shot, and something happens to like shake your soul into place or like shift things around or whatever, and that enables that ability, maybe all Sazed did was just like make it so you don't need that big of an experience.
I'm so tempted to continue down this rabbit hole, but
let's do a snapping episode.
We might need to go. I know. I was like, I've got further thoughts about maybe Harmony didn't do this intentionally. Maybe it's changing. We know things change without.
Okay.
From this book,
that can be relevant after the Ars Arcanum for sure.
Yeah. So maybe we'll circle back to that a little later.
Okay. I'm happy to let it rest for a minute.
It's very interesting how Shai says it's less the hemalurgy that's super important here. Like the hemalurgy and the souls is important, but like what Shai is interested in is just like, hey, maybe we don't need souls at all. We just got use this power. Maybe we could make the an Allomancer out of that. And
they do have purified door.
Granted, seems like that's hard to get, so maybe the sort of partial spikes could still be useful later.
Okay. Here's a question: I guess it's purified door, so I guess you could probably do it. In my mind, like if you couldn't, if you like charged a spike with like Devotion's Investiture, I'm not sure you could draw like on Preservation's power with Allomancy like that, But if you're making
Yeah,
it
it
out
need
of
to be purified.
pure
I think.
Investiture,
Yeah.
you probably
I think you can.
matter.
I think you can do it with pure.
Yeah.
Like either preservations or pure, right?
Yeah.
And maybe if it's pure, you have to like apply an additional level of what do they call it? Coding.
Yeah, or intent.
It feels like the coding's the important part, and maybe you just need the right coding to that's how you purify things. Maybe.
So maybe no, I think you might be onto something here when you say that it might be just the right coding. It may be that purified door is like O negative blood type. I think it's O negative. It's universal donor, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so if you are trying to make an Allomancer with Preservation's Investiture, that's just compatible. They are the same blood type.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make it with Purified Door, they're compatible because Purified Door doesn't care where it's
probably.
like no shard is going to reject that, right? No soul is going to reject that. But if you're trying to make it with Stormlight or whatever, they're butting heads.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that'd work. But
yeah, well, and like you think about how Stormlight like behaves differently than that sort of Investiture too. Like it is just, it's just different.
How do you purify the door? Open question, but maybe it's theoretically possible. Like
bleach.
With these spikes, you could purify the spikes and like stab it into someone else on some other planet to give some other ability. Like I feel like that should be possible theoretically somehow.
So like steal preservation off of Scadrians, scrub the preservation barcodes off of the thing, code that to give you
something
Sand
else.
Mastery.
Sand Mastery is probably one that would probably be the most compatible with this, yeah. Because like you couldn't do like a Elantrian very easily, I feel like, because
it would just be at Elantrian with no power source.
Yeah, that would not
except
be.
For also, it still works sometimes if you're on another planet entirely. We'll figure it out.
Well,
separate conversation.
But like Sand Mastery is one of those where it's like there is a genetic component, right? So like that's a good example.
Probably,
yeah. Although then
I can see that.
You get a Bayon, Eric, who has no known Sandmaster ancestors.
Look, there's some latent autonomy deep down, and you just need the right thing to snap them, just like the Mist or something.
Look,
that's not that mysterious.
Okay,
I don't know if it's genetic or if there's like a Sand Mastery virus, but that's
no. Okay. We don't need to get into that. Look at the R White's Head Omnibus episode, like that. There's some weird stuff. But like, I feel like theoretically that should be possible.
Yeah, I do like that.
Here's my question: is like, we've got this potentially ethical way to make spikes now. If you've got pure investiture that you've taken from the door, nobody cares about the door. Sorry, Devotion, Dominion.
They're dead.
You can manufacture infinite spikes out of this. Essentially, if you can code it and that you've solved that problem, how is that not OP? How will that not kind of get out of hand really easily, because I feel like some of the things that Brandon is doing in this book is him trying to like tamp down the OP-ness of Hemalurgy, where he's saying like, oh, you can only have so many spikes and you can only do this, where he's trying to prevent people from just like making a Mistborn really easily or a compounder really easily.
So those are interesting points. I feel like what that means is maybe in Era 3 or maybe even later, I don't know, you could just shop for an ability, but you can only get like one or two, right?
Yep.
And so certainly with like the compounding, that does tamp down the power level, but basically there would just be a lot more mistings, I feel like.
Yep.
I think that's the consequence, that you have a lot more mistings or a lot more ferochemists and things.
Which seems fine.
That seems fine. That doesn't seem horrible.
I see this as comparable to like the advancement of technology. Right.
Mm-hmm. Like a standard living raise for everyone.
Era 1 is, you have a few people who are ridiculously rich, and those are the Mistborn or the royalty. And you have a relatively small number of people who are moderately rich. That's the Mistings. And then everyone else off to prison. And then over time, there is Chris calls it commoditification of the metallic arts, which I think is a great term here. You have eaten the rich. There are no more super rich, but there are a lot more people with like a lot more. I think this metaphor got away from me for a moment.
Yeah,
but it's
I
like
don't know where you're going.
having like a smartphone or something. Maybe smartphone is a little too common, but
it could be very as if it gets easier. Like it could just be like it's an expensive thing, but reasonable.
A high end or like having your own place, something like that.
Mm-hmm. But the other side of it for me too is he's also introduced the medallions. And so why are what's going to be the benefit of one of these things over the other at the end of the day?
Yeah, because the medallions have restrictions too.
And they only have a few powers. For
I
the most
don't
part.
quite know how these things are going to be connected, but like it's clear that definitely seems like exactly what Kelsier wants to do, right? He wants to figure this out. Like I think the Lost Metal epilogue makes that clear. I don't know if it's going to get super commodified in Era 3. Like I think we need some steps, but this just makes me think of Cyberpunk era where it's just like,
oh no,
like Cyberpunk era has the whole like body modification aspect, and like spikes are literally that, and like granting ability, like the concept just writes itself, and you could have like people be like, I don't want to adjust my soul, I'm just going to use this medallion instead. Like it just all writes itself.
Dan can write the Cosmere Cyberpunk or something. That is the lowest priority series that I can possibly imagine.
I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. The more I think about it, I'm like,
have an 8th trilogy? Would you rather have 3 more Mistborn books or a trilogy on another planet?
Okay. Like, you're not wrong, but like I'm getting more excited about it just hearing about these ideas, you know?
I do think that maybe not as significant, but like one of the plot lines of Era 3 is going to be kind of the advancement and development of these, universal spike or partial spikes or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. As soon as Kelsier gets this info, he's like, all right, cool. Let's get on that. That's a good idea.
To the factory.
I wonder, because Moonlight has the book, like how long that's going to be for him to get that, because it seems like
that's a good point.
It might
Does
not
she
be.
have the book?
I thought so.
Mercy.
Did she? I thought she had it. Because she was like, I'm going to use my reversal stamp on this, obviously. Like, why would she give it to Mercy if she was going to use it,
I would have to reread that plot line. But
okay. Yeah. Moonlight might still have it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Kelsier's got to track her down, I guess.
Yeah, and she's the best.
Well, and that she's the best, and we need to see her again after Brandon did this to us.
Oh, she's so good.
She's so good. But like, also, I mean, the line after Moonlight talking about like making these spikes, Merassi's like, even the process of making medallions among the Malwish required Metalborn. So like if you had, for example, the Southerners would love this, right? Like that would be ridiculously powerful for the Southerners because they have very advanced stuff. Like, yeah, sure, give me 10 spikes, I'll do all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah, and the Metalborn are a bottleneck for their process as well. So they're always going to be valuable.
They might be fine with like even if they can only get temporary powers.
That might be enough
to allow them to manufacture medallions.
That's actually a really interesting point. Yeah, but I feel like their real goal is like, hey, I don't care if it's expensive, but yeah, just give me a bunch of these, right? And then we will be a super powerhouse. More than we already are.
It's interesting when you think about it. Like, in some ways, it's already the metallic arts have already been commodified because everyone in the South has a medallion, so they can live. Like every day, they are already doing that.
They're not as common, but
are they not? Is that the only way they survived? Was that they got the heat medallions?
I don't think they need the.
No, I think they do. They do, though.
Yes, that's what Kelsier brought to them. That's a technology.
Yeah. And the climate hasn't changed since then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think realistically, I think it's getting more medallions than just that one, right? Like maybe that one is extremely common, but it's getting the other ones,
because they do have the Fire Mothers and the Fire Fathers.
Yeah.
So maybe like that's a special thing. But yeah, okay, sure.
So I see the tier as like, okay, getting these spikes for these abilities, they're probably so high in demand that would be really expensive and valuable.
Yeah.
But like medallions, as those spikes spread around and knowledge of that spreads around, the medallions probably would get very cheap, right? And like it would probably take a while for those sorts of spikes to just be like, oh yeah, I can just buy one and get one, and then now I'm a coin shop. Like that would
Whereas
probably
getting a
be
medallion would be a lot more accessible.
Yeah,
for somebody.
Once they figure out the coding part.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
'Cause
Oh, yeah. You have to figure
that's
out
still
that
an
part.
open question. Yeah.
Which, and that's probably
It's still an open question, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have one more question about these universal/partial spikes or whatever.
Sure.
We have I think we've mentioned ferrochemy briefly, but we
Yes.
haven't really talked about the
yes.
possibility of gaining ferrochemy with these spikes.
Because they're always saying metalborn in this. They're
Yes.
talking about making metalborn.
Yes.
Except in one place.
Okay.
And Trone wants to make allomancers. He's like, I need allomancers. I don't care about
where
ferrochemistry.
he's specifically talking about allomancers. So I don't I think it's fully possible that this is their entire objective, is that they're focusing on allomancers. I don't see why they would limit themselves to just that, but it's possible that the set's current experiments are it's possible that their current experiments are specifically allomantic in nature.
Yeah, well, because in my head, this is kind of my question is, let's say they're trying to get ferrochemical powers in this process. Do you need exclusively Terrace people to do that?
Yeah.
Or is it, we've got Vendel theorizing that, there were so few people that everybody's a little bit Terrace. So is there enough that it's just that you could get Ferukmi from there? Or do you have to be, if you're harvesting, do you have to be harvesting discreetly from people who, it's kind of a gross question, but how does that work? Because Ferukmi isn't the same as allomancy.
Yeah.
So
I feel this is more the problem on the coding side rather than the investing, the spike side.
Yes.
And admittedly, no way of knowing how that works in any way, right? But ultimately, power's power. Ferrochemy is weird because it's like that balance between ruin and preservation, and these are just stealing preservation.
This is stealing exclusively preservation the way this is being discussed. So if this is actually a balanced magic.
And allomancy it's preservation's art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense that you can juice up someone with preservation and unlock their preservation magic.
That's true. That's true. I guess I just think that maybe there's probably some deep logic that Brandon absolutely hasn't figured out. That in the bind points, that there's these spiritual things going on, and as long as you have that spike charged with the ferrochemy, that creates the right. The fills the right thing in the spirit web so that now you're a ferrochemist. I don't see why it would be impossible to code a spike to do that as long as you put it in the right place. I feel like that's not that different but I guess what you're saying is when you kill the ferrochemist with that spike, you're getting both the preservation and ruin, I guess.
Yeah, you need to be stealing the piece of someone that would have been a Ferukimist if they had been strong enough. Yeah. It's really what you're getting at the end of the day. And some people might have both. I don't even know, because some people might have been a twinborn, but they were both too weak. But is it a discrete thing you're taking? Do you have to visualize one over the other instead when you're putting the spike through?
That's interesting. Yeah, there's definitely some interesting thoughts. Well, actually, what I'm wondering is, you have the spike, it's preservation stuff. Maybe if your final recipient doesn't have enough ruin, then it just doesn't work. Maybe even if you code it right, maybe. But maybe another person might have enough ruin that you could make that investiture work out. But I don't know. There's room for that to happen.
So generally apply such a consistent effect regardless of whoever received them.
But again, the other spikes are you're killing a full ferrochemist, right? Whereas these other universal spikes are not.
I think spiritual genetics is the key here, because ferrochemy is genetic a lot more than allomancy is.
I don't know if I'd say a lot more necessarily. I'd say it's the same sort of thing.
Similarly, yeah.
I don't think it's different in that regard.
Okay.
Although, I mean, you could make an argument that, like, you know, I guess it did. Well, no, it's probably pretty similar because I was like, Tindwall had a lot of Feruchemist children, but then so did Strav. Had a lot of Emissary children. They had a lot of children generally, both of them. So,
okay. I can, okay. It is genetic.
Yeah. And spiritually genetic, so not just pure chromosomes and things.
Whatever that's worth.
Whatever that means. You can be identical twins.
Spirit webby genetic.
Yeah. It feels like you can't just. That's a can of worms. So, Hemalurgy, at the end of the day, I feel like, is like at its very core, is manipulation of someone's spiritual aspect.
Sure.
Forget about spikes, forget about attributes or whatever.
Sure.
You are performing spiritual surgery. That is not too dissimilar from what we have been calling in the past direct shardic intervention. A shard can just reach and do things into your soul. Asterisks, terms and conditions apply.
Sure.
And so, in that context, presumably, a shard can make someone into a feruchemist.
Yeah, I'd seen. I mean, yeah, that would happen.
A shard made Spook into a Mistborn.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Mm-hmm. It's
and
very,
so,
you have power over that person, absolutely.
Presumably, theoretically speaking, Hemalurgy can do the same. I think Hemalurgy, like the reason people in the Cosmere are freaking out over Hemalurgy is, one, you are killing people, but two, you can do whatever you want with it if you have the right knowledge.
The right knowledge and the right spikes, yep.
And so presumably Hemalurgy can do the same things that a shard can, albeit on a much lower power scale. So theoretically, you can make a feruchemist out of that. I don't know how you would do that, because like all of this thing that I've just said is theoretical, right? Practically speaking, like I don't think just stealing power from or even if you're not stealing it, if you're just like pouring a bunch of purified door into your spike.
Sure.
I don't think just like investiture that is shaped the right way, like you'd have to shape that investiture in the shape of like the spiritual gene that grants feruchemy.
Yeah, I think spiritual gene is probably like the right way to think about it at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think that's the coding.
Expressed strongly or expressed weakly, you know.
Yes.
For some reason, that feels more complicated to me than the elementic equivalent, and I don't know why. I think it might be because when we are building allomancers with this, when we're building a mistings with this, so the way I think of it is you're unlocking something that is already there. People already had the potential to be a coin shot or a Tinai, and you are nurturing that potential into manifesting. I don't know if that's the
snapping.
Say that again.
Are you talking about in snapping when you're saying that, when you're nurturing?
I was talking about the spikes, but we established that they do the same thing.
Oh, well.
Universal spikes, that is. I don't think feruchemy works that way. Like, I think feruchemy is you either have it and you're a feruchemist, or you don't.
I mean, that's true, for sure.
Because there's no snapping in there.
True.
It's you are either born with the magic or you're not.
I don't think I'm quite following.
I'm totally losing the thread. Like, obviously, you can grant feruchemy, so like that. I don't see the problem. Like, we know you can grant feruchemy.
You're just saying that there's. I guess you're just saying that there's no in between for being a feruchemist or not. Like, I think there are stronger and weaker feruchemists, though. Are there not? Like,
yeah, like it'd be an efficiency thing, right? Of like, yeah. Just
in the same way that when the Inquisitors got their spikes that had degraded, they were less efficient.
Sure.
I feel like the thing, Evgeni, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the thing that is confusing to you is that with allomancy, you sort of see how the mechanism of how the spike is granting the additional power, and that feels like snapping. And so like it feels like you have a better idea of how the spike is actually manipulating the spirit web. Whereas with feruchemy, you're like, I don't know the mechanism, but like we know it works. Right?
Yeah, with ferrochemy, it feels like you have with ferrochemy, it feels like you have to steal someone's gene, or let's not talk about genes. Let's talk about organs. You have to steal someone's ferrochemical organ and graft it onto someone else because that someone else didn't have that organ at all. With allomancy, everyone or maybe not everyone, but like some people have like a tiny vestigial misting organ. And what you are doing is you are growing that into a full power granting organ.
I just don't see any evidence that there isn't a potential vestigial ferrochemical organ that you just don't see expressed. Like, I don't understand why that can't be.
Yeah, I think there would be.
It can. I think it can, and that might be like the explanation that I like. There's just no evidence for its existence in the same way that there's no evidence against its existence.
Yeah. I guess I also don't see spiking as being that analogous to snapping. So maybe that's one of the reasons I'm not 100% following.
I admit I'm more interested in, can you use these universal spikes with like preservation power, if that is sufficient to do this manipulation to make ferrochemists in a way, right? Like, do you need some preservation and ruin to make that work?
Yeah.
Like that's where I'm getting to. Like we can grant the ferrochemy. For me, I think there's a possibility that you can use these spikes to make allomancers, but maybe they'll find that the ferrochemy doesn't quite work with just preservation, and you might need purified door to invest a spike, and that could work because that, can...
that would sub in for the missing...
Ruin, potentially, maybe. Yeah. But maybe you could use a spike to get some ruin out of someone. Like, there is ruin in people.
No reason why you can't.
Like,
it's probably just a matter of intent.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
Although
just get your purified ATM spike. Think the right thought.
Well, but it's just interesting because they're grabbing the vestigial preservation for that. Mm-hmm. So it's like, can you break off that ruin off of a soul, or would that be too damaging? Like, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of hand waving that can be done.
I could see the vestigial preservation being a simplification in that it's almost at all times we are stealing that.
Yeah.
But except in the case if we have me stealing a ferrochemical, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But well, it'll be interesting. We'll see if Brandon digs into that, or if that's just something where he'll be like, and it works. You can.
It works. You can do it. You just need to code it in the right way. Yeah, it works.
I feel like with mixed magics, occasionally he forgets about one of the people that are in the mix. You're just like, oh, okay, well.
I know people were like super excited for, the kinetic energy from Stormlight and like the really sciencey like aspects of the Cosmere, but like this is what I am excited about. Like,
this is right there. Yeah.
Not the science that makes the magic work, but I was going to say the magic that makes the science work, because I thought that would sound cool, but it doesn't actually make sense.
Not at all. Sometimes you just say things I'm like, cool, Evgeni.
That's yes. But like the magical science, like the underpinnings of the Cosmere, like this is what's exciting for me.
Yeah. Should we talk about the Ars Arcanum?
Yep. And get into my contention about Brandon not being correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Jess isn't here, but I'll at least try and say her commentary.
No, that's fair. You can even pre-buttle me.
I'm just scanning the this passage.
So maybe let's talk about some just highlights of things this Lost Metal Ars Arcanum says, if it's been a bit since you've read the thing. I think the craziest thing is you can't make Inquisitors anymore. Mm-hmm. Right? Like you just straight up can't do that. Bodies will not accept that many spikes. And that only worked because Ruin was pushing hard on the fabric of Scadrial, leaking into spirit webs through any method possible, that's a crazy line. But sorry, this is high level here. That part's crazy. And that like compounding can't really do, apparently. Seems like Marsh knows how to compound. He's capable capable of compounding, but if you make a modern most key, compounding seems beyond the abilities of any hemalurgy created in this more modern era.
Yeah, I think Marsh is grandfathered in.
Yeah, he's grandfathered in.
essentially,
Yes.
yeah.
Spiritual circumstances were at the time that he was spiked.
Yep. So that's crazy. And then there's ruin subservience to preservation. We got to talk about that as well.
That's almost like that is a whole. That could almost be its own podcast.
I do think we did talk about it in the Harmony episode. I think.
Yeah,
I think we did.
Probably. That is just a cool line, though.
God,
anytime
it's
you
crazy.
happen upon it.
Oh, it's so good. And then I think the thing that David wants to talk about is Marsh. Because Chris interviewed Marsh. That's what happened here, which is bonkers. He speaks of things of the past, like hemalurgic decay and the toll that holding so many spikes takes upon the body.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you want to start?
Let me start with that, because this was a question that I had, because Brandon's got a little bit of ambiguity in the way that he talks about hemalurgic decay.
Yes.
Because it can refer to two discrete things. But and the first of them is that essentially when a spike is created, as I mentioned before, as an N-negative magic system, a very helpful classification system that we all use all the time.
That's totally useless to everyone.
Perhaps overuse sometimes.
Yeah, but a little bit of power is lost, and that has to do with how a lot of times how power is obtained has to do with the intent of the shard itself, at least in my understanding of it,
And to clarify what that means is when you steal someone's ability to steal push and you give that to yourself, you are a weaker coin shot than they were.
You can't push as hard in the same way that Elend was much stronger than Vin. There are these gradations in strength and Allomancy, or these other things. And the other type of hemalurgic decay is in a spike that is not in a body, it will gradually decay down to a very low but non-zero state as time passes. I kind of think about it like radioactive decay. Now we have this part of the Ars Arcanum saying this no longer happens. And my question was not at all, not one of these two things. Like what is being said here?
So I want to pitch an idea to you that I'm not even sure I believe in.
Yeah, I'm ready to tear it apart now.
Okay.
The two are the same thing.
I mean, that's fine. I don't know why that would be, but
so as you were speaking, it occurred to me that you are describing the same phenomenon. It's someone has an ability at a certain power level, and you spike that ability out of them, that power level goes down. If you leave the spike out, that power level continues to go down.
See, in my head, they're both called decay because they lead to the same thing, and that's why they're. It's just easy enough to refer to them together. But it's a pretty discrete phenomenon in my mind, because in one, it must happen. You will always lose power at the moment a spike is created. You will not steal all of it. We know that to be a fact, or at least as things existed. But if you drive the spike directly into another body, it doesn't have to decay any further. That stops, and it can never happen as long as it stays in that body. It will never. That second thing will never happen to it. And maybe, you could model it like it's an instantaneous loss, I guess. Like at the very moment of creation, just because at the very first bit is very quick, and there's just no way that you can do it fast enough.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's kind of cool.
You are ripping power from someone's soul and you're putting it into a physical object. And during that process, the power is leaking out.
It's possible.
And then even if it goes from body to body, it still goes from soul to spike to soul. I'll
give it a maybe. It's an interesting thought.
Okay. I want to read the WAB about this.
Yeah. And so thank you to Argent for repeating it word for word so faithfully. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, because those guys did not read the script. They're reviving.
We have a script.
It's fine. Yes. I tried to transcribe the thing for our Midnight Essence one, and you just asked a totally different question. Well, not totally different, but it was the same question. You just used different words to say the question.
I half panicked as it was happening. I was like, oh my gosh, is Brandon going to answer a different question? But it worked out fine. It was exactly the information I wanted.
Yeah.
This is from our interview with Brandon.
Yep.
We no longer have only one. The most recent interview
The
with
most
Brandon,
recent interview. Yay!
Woo! Look at
Woo! That is really exciting.
in which I asked, the lost metal Ars Arcanum calls...
Okay, just read it normally.
The lost metal Ars Arcanum calls hemalurgic decay a thing of the past. The term has been used to describe the loss of power in spikes outside of bodies, as well as the small amount of power that is lost at the moment the spike is created. The two things that David just talked about. Which one of those things no longer happens? And Brandon said, the first one, the decay of spikes outside of a body. They figured out how to make that no longer a thing. And I wanted to clarify. So it's still a thing that happens in the Cosmere in general. They just know how to avoid it completely. And Brandon says yes.
And my response is, I believe Brandon has forgotten he's written this into the Ars Arcanum, and it's just thinking about the fact that you can put spikes in blood.
Yep.
Like, that's 100% my read of it, because it does not make any sense for Chris to write this down as a new development when this was a thing they knew as far back as when Marsh was an Inquisitor. This was a thing the Inquisitors were doing. This is not a modern development. This is of the practicing hemalurgists that existed in the world. They've been doing this for centuries. So why would this be described as like a new thing?
Very minor thing. It does seem that Chris is using hemalurgist to mean the recipient rather than the pure person doing the spiking, which is
Isn't that what? That's how it's always been, though.
Is it though?
Yeah. No, that's always people always want to use it as the person who knows hemalurgy, but it's the person who gets the powers has always been called hemalurgist.
Oh, that's
the best of my recollection.
I don't know. If
people want it. I think you've wanted it to be the other way.
I think we've had some categorization discussions on the copper bind about that.
We definitely. That's why it's come before, and I'm pretty sure that like we fought this fight before, and I won the last time, but I could be wrong.
That's very possible.
Here we go. Hero of Ages. More telling, perhaps, was the fact that when a hemalurgist used his abilities, the only time hemalurgist is mentioned in the original trilogy.
Okay.
Which makes sense, because like anyone can create a spike, but only the recipient of that spike gets powers.
Well, and presumably a lot of the time, unless you're like just an expert that doesn't want to participate, you're probably learning hemalurgy to use it on yourself to give yourself powers.
Yes,
you know,
I guess that's true.
That's a big part of it.
I suppose.
I mean, Inquisitors were not doing they had like presumably like people who are doing the spiking for like the Inquisitor would lay down with.
Remember, it was like a whole like ecstasy thing when they like got Marsh. Remember, they grabbed him. There were a whole bunch of Inquisitors.
Yeah, but like the other Inquisitors were like Marsh wasn't.
Oh, true. That's true. But that was non-consensual, you know. But they were still hemalurgists, both using powers and hemalurgists who are knowledgeable practicing hemalurgy.
Yeah, but that's conflating the two things.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, talking about hemalurgic decay, I think when I first read this, I was like, he speaks of things of the past, and I conflated it with the spikes and the change that happened that the bodies can't accept more spikes. And so like, that is clearly not the case, right?
In my mind, he's speaking like we are getting like 4 or 5 examples of things that have changed because Ruin is no longer exerting this pressure. And some of them are that you can no longer compound because of what I believe to be identity contamination. Some of that is that Inquisitors don't get as sleepy. Some of that is that hemalurgic decay no longer occurs. And these are just all repercussions of a fundamental change about how Ruin and preservation are kind of pressing on the world. That's my read of it. I don't know why anything else would have changed.
Okay. In my opinion, given this context of the WoB, I don't think that interpretation is correct. And so what I mean is this paragraph talking about hemalurgic decay, like he's talking about things of the past, but I don't think there's any textual evidence to say that Marsh is no longer sleepy, like with the sleeping for the day.
Inquisitors during his day slept for many hours. Is that not a past tense? During his day, not during modern day. That's another, like, this is like, read like the first paragraph. She says something is odd is happening with the nature of spikes in Hemalurgy on Scadrial. A particular note to arcanists who study the nature of intent and connection. And then she talks to Marsh, and then she gives all these examples of things that are changing. Like, that's, to me, that's the entire context of this. Is she's like, something weird is happening with spikes in Hemalurgy because rune and preservation are jostling differently, or something has changed.
She's saying the magic is changing.
Yeah, like, this is a big. And it's not because Sazed wants it to, at least in some of these cases.
Okay, but like you earlier said that Marsh is grandfathered into compounding, so he doesn't have that problem, right?
So what I'm saying is that is obviously apparent because Marsh is still able to compound.
Correct.
So in this case, the way that the spikes worked when he was created must still be in effect. And I would say he's probably still sleepy, except for the fact that she says Inquisitors during his day. And so to me, that implies that that is no longer the case because it's not like there are modern day Inquisitors that aren't sleepy. It's just him. He's the only one left. What a weird statement to make if that's not what she's saying.
I mean, I guess.
I mean, it could be. It is not important whether Marsh is still sleepy or not. You could say maybe he is still grandfathered in. But I'm saying there's a change.
I guess the reason I bring up Marsh's sleepiness is because that relates to the hemalurgic decay thing in the same paragraph, right? Because Chris is saying, like, they're both the things that are, like, the things of the past, right? And so that's why I'm bringing it up. So Brandon seems to be meaning it differently. And I think these are just things that did happen that are not relevant, but are not the changing nature of harmony.
I totally disagree.
There is a third thing in the middle of this paragraph that we haven't touched on.
Yeah.
And I wanna be conveniently we have 3 people, so I do want to touch on that.
Okay, you know what? We're going into WOB mode so we can just have this on screen just the whole time. It just needs to be here the whole time. And it was silly that I didn't do this. So yes, let's get the entire paragraph here. Yes.
So he speaks of things of the past, like hemalurgic decay. Okay, we covered that. And the toll that holding so many spikes takes upon the body. We haven't talked about that. Put a pin on it for a second.
Yep.
Inquisitors during these days, sleepy. Okay.
I think that is the toll, by the way.
That's the toll. Yeah, that's what I read it as.
So are we... Let's start meeting ourselves somewhere.
This is exactly where I thought this episode was going here.
Do we think that the toll upon the bodies of Inquisitors is caused by ruin pushing on the fabric of Scadrial and like ruining souls faster?
No, I would say indirectly, in that it would not have been possible for them to have had so many spikes, I guess. Maybe I do think Marsh is still sleepy, but it doesn't, to me, I guess the hemalurgic decay is separate from that because of the argument I made previously, which is that they've always known how to do this. So why would that be a new development? They've always known. Marsh has known how to do this. This was their burial ritual. This was a thing that the Lord Ruler must have known when he told the Inquisitors to start doing it, unless they figured out themselves in their weird ways. It's not a new thing. It was a secretive thing. It was a secretive cabal that practiced it, but they knew how to do it.
All of those points are valid. To answer Evgeni's question, I agree with David. I think the toll is just like, you can put a spike in your eye, but like obviously your body's warping, so you still have a brain that works, right? Yeah. And like it's that toll, and you have 9 to 11 of these or more in Marsh's case, and that is the toll. And the only reason that happens is because of Ruin's pressure that he exerted. And not the pressure itself.
Yes, okay. But so my thought was, well, this is a thing of the past because so without this pressure on the reality, you can't have as many spikes, and so you can't have this burden on people's souls.
Right. Yeah, your burden would be lessened. Yeah, and like presumably the threshold when you started to need a linchpin spike, I guess. I don't know, but like,
But I don't think you can't even have that many more. Like the
No,
linchpin, I feel like they
you
don't
can't.
do that.
But like, presumably back then, if you had 1 or 2 spikes, you would not be inordinately tired, right? Is more what I
don't
mean.
think so. And like in my mind, I kind of am like, well, it's possible to me that it was both a lot to have a lot of spikes, and that Ruin pushing on the fabric of Scadrial didn't help.
That's possible.
You know,
Sure. Yeah.
but like, and so that Marsh it's a little better, but not great still, because you still have 11 spikes that ache all the time.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can call, like, the weirdness here is, of course, that the putting spikes in blood, stopping them from decaying, is, of course, a retcon that Brandon had no plan for in the original trilogy, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like, I
because
think
he did it
had
in
that
Secret
idea,
History, right?
and then he came back to a Secret History and said, this is a thing you can do.
Sure.
But, I mean, maybe he thought it to himself, but it has always struck me as a little bit of a retcon. But because like it's not like
It was
really,
only
it's
in
not like
Secret
you,
History.
yeah, it's the only place we
Yeah.
see it, because the Inquisitors do it when they dump Carr in the pool.
Yeah. I
And
guess
then it's
in my
Eric
head I
Gilmore.
just conflated, oh, it's Carr, he's Era 1, so we
Mhm.
must have seen it in there, but I guess not.
No,
Yeah,
he
no,
didn't.
it was a new reveal, and like Ruin's not doing it with the spikes that he gets, although he's not really leaving them laying around either. He's just mostly to try to get.
Yeah, Ruin
You
knows
could
perfectly how to
people.
align it to make it work.
You could also make an argument that like he himself is keeping them from decaying.
Yeah, I've always
I guess
wondered
that's
how
true.
much power he has over that. Like when Wax is pretty clearly using pewter and alloy of lime, like that's got to be such a weak spike. Like I could see Harmony pumping it up a little bit.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Shooter
Yeah.
in alloy?
Yeah, when he's like, oh yeah, when the Mists speak to him, he's so clearly using pewter. This is we can talk about this later. I'll send you some quotes. It is so obvious.
Like I
love this.
don't doubt that it could have happened. It's just it's not something that I've registered.
Yeah.
Oh, this is like, well, I mean, like this was a thing that was much talked about and like when Ally came out, in my recollection.
I want to read the rest of the paragraph that's on screen for
Mhm.
audio listeners. So, Inquisitors during his day slept for many hours. The words of founding say this was due to the need for storing health. But Marsh indicates there may be more subtlety to it than first understood. I assume, Evgeni, that's the part that we didn't read that you wanted to talk about.
I mean, that was a side thing. I did want to address the toll on the souls.
Oh, okay. Oh, so that's just what we talked about. But okay, let me finish the paragraph. I'd postulate that it was in part a side effect of the incredible burden placed upon their souls by the nature of their hemalurgic transformation, of their horrific transformations. Sorry. So, okay, given Brandon's wob and the fact that I believe Marsh can still compound, and I see little reason for his amount of spikes to not still take that toll on his body, and 3, that Chris's postulation is that the side effect is the incredible burden placed upon their souls by the nature of their transformation.
How does that tie to the decay?
I guess what I'm just saying is these are things that have not mechanically changed because of Harmony ascending.
It's a little bit of an odd one out in the paragraph, but I think it's all like it's kind of an odd spot to put it. I'll grant you, but I don't. Why call it out? Like what is she saying there that they just noted? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like explain to me why that sits there.
I don't have an answer to that question, but
Yeah.
but I'm just with this knowledge, I think all of these things in this paragraph like aren't core mechanical changes to hemalurgy. Is that is my current read on this.
I don't think that those unrelated things have any bearing on whether this is a core mechanical change when that's the overall subject of the thing. And that's the context of this, is that because of this overall mechanical change in the number of spikes somebody can accept, these are the things that we're seeing manifest.
Yeah. Okay, that all of that is super valid points, David. That for sure. But I don't know why Chris is just like, let's just put like hemalurgic decay in there.
I mean, honestly, I'm like, Chris, what was that? Like, honestly, I use an editor there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, regardless of which definition of hemalurgic decay we use, that bit stands out.
What does that have to do with the rest of the paragraph?
Yeah.
We're getting into it on Shardcast. It's like, Chris, what are you
Well,
doing here?
she's saying a lot of really dead stuff, and you got to read it kind of closely.
Yeah. I mean that is all valid. What one can only assume that we have known about putting the spike in blood, and as Jess got a word of Brandon, you can just literally put the spike in a stake, and that works.
Stake. Yep.
You can. That's canon.
As long as the spike thinks it is in a body.
Yes. So meat works, and it'll prevent that decay. So it's like, yeah, they have known about that for a long time. So I'm like, why bring it up? That's
and then
super
like
valid.
my head, there was like an aspect of this where she's kind of like, in my head, she's sort of like saying a little bit here, he's the real deal. Like this guy, he remembers the past. Like he can compound. Like this is Iron Eyes from the past, and he remembers all these things the way things used to be. And so part of that, I feel like, can her just be listing things that he's like, oh yeah, like, yep, I really am exhausted, and yep, I got these spikes, and yep, I can compound, and no one else seems to. She's like verifying these facts as a scientist with essentially a mythological figure.
Yeah, basically, right.
Yeah,
But
so I think some of it is her just saying he seems to be, this guy is an immortal that seems to be from a different age and has a lot of this stuff.
Even in that context, the hemalurgic decay line is weird because, like, you can demonstrably demonstrate. Couldn't you demonstrably demonstrate? It's a thing that happens. Take a spike out.
If it stopped happening now, he's like, well, they used to get weaker, and she's like, huh, but they don't now.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, Brandon Swab, is it does still happen. Chris would know that, right? Surely, but maybe she just doesn't have enough access to spikes, maybe, and the knowledge.
No, well, I mean, it doesn't. I guess I'm not understanding. My argument is that it doesn't really happen anymore. So she's like, that's the status, is that hemalurgic decay doesn't really happen anymore. But he talks about it like it does.
I'm saying I'm taking Brandon at his word that hemalurgic decay can still occur. It's just they have methods to prevent it, which is what the law says.
I'm talking about the law. I'm talking about like this passage.
Yeah. Sure.
But anyway,
that would definitely make sense in the context
here.
Yeah.
I think we've got it.
We need to just continue asking. It's like, why did Chris talking about hemalurgic decay here? That'd be really great. That's the part I'm confused about.
This is one of those things where I think we need to go back to Brandon at some point and just pretend we never asked in the first place.
The next 3 Brandon interviews were like, so here's this passage.
Yeah, we should have read him it instead of saying it with no context, because then I feel like we would have got him right back where he was when he wrote it.
Perhaps, and to an extent, I thought that's what I was doing by like explicitly saying like what the 2 definitions. But I guess like,
look, you did your best.
Always craft the perfect question.
Yeah,
no, you can't. And I feel like sometimes the Ars Arcanum things, like they're often the last written. They're kind of like a little flourish at the end. So sometimes I feel like they probably aren't as present unless he's like really like diving into it.
Yeah. Should we read the
Let's
next
get
paragraph?
out of this.
So right after the horrific transformations, modern souls, however, seem to simply reject spikes of this magnitude. That's weird in of itself. How does the body reject a spike? That's crazy.
Do you just die?
I feel like maybe it doesn't do anything. Like it's there, it doesn't hurt you, but it also doesn't. You can't suddenly manifest the power either.
God,
it's
that's
just
crazy.
There.
That's bonkers. Further research is required, but I believe that this has something to do with the nature of Ruin's subservience to preservation in the current dual vessel known as Harmony. The level of corruption of a soul that was possible in ancient days is no longer viable. If too many spikes are added, souls stop gaining powers. Okay, so it just says that. Okay. All right, cool. Good talk. So I'm reading the paragraph. Marsh doesn't think this is a conscious decision on Harmony's part. Indeed, I think this is beyond the conscious abilities of even a shard. And then the next paragraph. Instead, I believe this is the nature of souls. Read the invested portion of a person's nature and their balance. And their balance with the Cosmere. In the ancient days, Ruin was pushing hard on the fabric of Scadrial, leaking into spirit webs through any method possible, causing souls to decay faster, to accept more spikes than they should have been able to, and leaving the resulting person burdened beyond what was reasonable.
And I do think, for a little bit of context, that's part of what me thinking that Ruin being making Marsh sleepier is coming from, because it's pushing on his soul more
Okay,
too.
yeah,
and he's
sure,
like,
sure.
But that was a little, that informed a little bit of that.
Sure.
But
I
That should be
I
the
read it a
title
little
of the
bit
episode.
differently.
Marsh is sleepy.
Marsh is sleepy
Question
Marsh.
mark. Question Marsh.
Question mark.
Ew.
I do read that a little bit differently, but I think
Mhm.
the difference is not negligible, but not relevant. I think like Ruin is pushing on the fabric that enables more spikes to be shoved into people's souls, which, well, I think you're shoving the spikes anyway, right? But that enables more powers to be granted to people's souls, and this kind of so much mixing of investiture in souls puts a strain on the soul itself, right?
Mhm.
It reminds me of not compounding, but resonances a little bit, actually. Where if you have a couple of powers, they mix together and you kind of get a new power. But if you have too many powers, you just kind of get a soup.
Oh, sure. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, in that
Does
sense.
Hemalurgy get resonances?
I don't think
That's an
so.
interesting question.
I don't think there's any evidence that they do.
We don't know a lot of resonances, though.
That's true.
Also true.
Yeah, so like I guess it's possible if someone got a spike and like they became twinborn, they could have a similar resonance. Like, why would that not be possible, right?
I don't know. My only thought was if there's some similar weirdness with the identity corruption, and there's like some disharmony there, and that
Sure.
it's not really you.
Sure. What do you think it means with causing souls to decay faster? That's kind of an interesting little phrase there.
My first thought is to compare this to like natural body aging.
Okay. Sure.
In that over time, like your body continuously replenishes itself, right? Cells divide, old ones die, etc., etc. But like over time, there are more and more mistakes in this replication process, and so you just end up with, over a long enough period of time, a worse copy of the original. And so, not necessarily the case, but maybe like souls go through a similar thing where they naturally decay over time, because like the natural state of the Cosmere is not to have immortals everywhere. Like ruin is a part of life.
I don't know. There's so many that I might make an argument that
15 years ago, I would agree with that sentence.
Yeah.
I don't know about that anymore.
We are focusing the spotlight on a lot of immortals, but like on average, not that many. On average, people die.
Am I losing my mind, or I have a vague recollection that maybe Inquisitors don't live to as old of an age as regular people? Did I just invent that?
That could be in an annotation. I feel like they mostly didn't live to the same age as regular people because they were always killing each other and dying.
There is an annotation that I did find during this that like Inquisitors did eventually die of old age. So like that is possible, but maybe I just invented like them aging
younger.
maybe a bit faster.
I would not be surprised if that were the case, but I don't remember that.
Because like it could be that like the spiritual damage like is affecting their physical selves, right? And that's causing that strain and like causing more aging, so to speak.
Yeah.
That seems to make sense in my brain.
Yeah, it definitely could be true. And one way that I was thinking about reading this is that you could think of it as just that ruin, the decay of the soul is ruin allowing for more advanced decay. And it's not possible anymore because these spikes aren't taking. But with ruin pressing on the soul, that is the decay it's talking about. Like when you put a spike in, the soul would decay, but now it won't. It won't accept that attribute, and it'll just kind of sit there. And that's
right. Yeah.
But I don't think that's the most. It's kind of a reading. I'm not like super happy with that. So
yeah.
It could also mean that people just went to the beyond faster when they died.
Yeah.
That's boring.
There's the line of the level of corruption of a soul, which is just always interesting to hear the word corruption, especially considering our Black Smoke episode and Red Smoke episode. I don't think that's what's happening here, but it's just an interesting use.
In a way it is, right? Because you were putting someone else's soul into your own, So
Yeah.
you were talking about mixing of investitures.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
It's not in the same context as like, a shard corrupting another shard's investiture, but it's kind of similar on a much smaller scale.
Maybe when we see cross Cosmere spikes, there'll just be like a ton of red smoke or something.
That could be pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, they're mostly just playing around with preservation's investiture.
I do wonder if, maybe there should have been red smoke.
Okay, we don't need to rehash that. That's just so interesting. You would add another spike to the right bind point, and it just wouldn't gain powers.
It just doesn't do anything.
Which honestly is interesting to me, because I feel like part of the right bind point and making this spiritual surgery work like makes it so it warps the body so that you don't just die from having a giant metal thing in your body. So like
what if your sixth spike is through the eye?
Yeah,
I think that it's just got the same. It's just kind of like a neutral thing, And I don't think that the spike has to, because like the damage still does occur. Like it's not like when you drive a spike through the eye that like your brain is like parting around it and actually nothing ever happened. It's like it got a spike driven through your brain and like magically and maybe some physical transformations, it's still functional.
Yeah.
So I just think it's probably like the power is not taking, you're not able to access it, but it's still plugged into your spirit web. It's not killing you, presumably. Yeah. Or that'd be kind of sad, but it could be that it's just like, oh my gosh, you stabbed me with a piece of metal. What the heck? Someone get the unsealed gold mine quick.
No one in Era 2 has the courage to put a spike through their eye like Inquisitors do. Yeah, that's just because they lack courage.
Come on, just
gleefully
casual.
Yeah, well, except Kelsier, but like Telson wouldn't, right?
Kelsier did it for the aesthetic. They were like, we can just do it in your forearm, and he was like, oh no,
that would not look as cool.
Kelsier definitely, if there's multiple hemalurgic bind points that work, coolness would be a factor he would choose.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Demonstrably.
Yeah. How else are you going to get one eye for the common man and one eye for the gods?
He came up with the line as it was developed and was like, no, this is how I need it to be. Although,
what do you get through the eye? Was it steel?
Well, steel and
the
iron,
physical one,
presumably. Yeah.
Iron, steel, tin, and pewter. Steel's senses, says Tin.
Well, that's the latent stuff, right? Yeah. So that, I don't know, that this is just like crazy stuff here. This whole Ars Arcanum. We did talk about Ruin subservience to preservation in the Harmony episode, so I don't think we don't need to go
on that tangent.
But it is still really cool. Let's switch that around and get Discord in here.
I do think that is what is leading to whatever changes we can agree on are occurring.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yes. It's also so interesting, Ruin pressing hard on the fabric of Scadrial, because in a sense, I would assume that that's more like near the end, right? But clearly you could make Inquisitors earlier on in the Final Empire, because there used to be 16 original Inquisitors. And presumably that was like, maybe not like first century, but like the first few centuries, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could imagine Ruin as just like in his captivity pressing against Scadrial and Rage. What I mean? Just like constant, constantly tense.
He's trying constantly straining on the prison. Yeah, sure. Yeah. That works. That works for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the prison continued to fail as time went on, and he was able to exert more and more of that pressure in the world. Finally, but
maybe the original Inquisitors could only go up to like 5, 6, 7 spikes, and then you end up with Marsh having like 20 something or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. That is like an insane advancement beyond even what the Lord Ruler was doing. So that was like final form Ruin.
And I mean that really comes to the last paragraph, which maybe we want to just read that. At any rate, the end result is a limit on the number of spikes a person can hold without external intervention. So Ruin could obviously help with that potentially. And then we get the compounding stuff. In most key, compounding seems beyond the abilities of any hemalurgist created in this more modern era. The secret to cracking why this is and how to circumvent it could be of utmost importance to those watching hemalurgy and its presumed danger to the Cosmere as a whole. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good idea to circumvent that one, Chris. So that I find that yikes for sure.
It seems in like near infinite power seems dangerous.
Yeah, ultimately, Era 2 is Brandon powering down. It's like compounding is scary. Like let's maybe not do that as super much because the Lord Ruler is OP.
Yeah. Yeah, it is always interesting to see from like a meta perspective, like the balancing act that goes on in terms of him like doing interesting stuff with the magic, but not accidentally breaking it so that you're just like, why doesn't everyone do this? Even though there are still some holes occasionally.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think this flows directly into that essentially because he's saying that, okay, so we can't, modern hemalurgists can't compound. And then this is from the Lost Metal chapter 28. They're talking to Marsh about the set, looking for ATM and all those experiments they're doing and the racing by extension. This is extremely dangerous. So far, I do not believe they've learned the secret to compounding via hemalurgy. So there is a secret. So maybe that's another thing is that Marsh just knows that there's a secret and he figured it out when he stopped being able to compound naturally, but he knows now how to do it. But identity contamination prevents it. That is our only saving grace. If they could still do that, and he's just like, thank gosh, they don't know how. They don't know the trick.
So here's where my brain goes.
Okay,
It goes around the spike that's through and through it.
Okay.
I am reminded back to the was it souls decaying? Was that the phrase?
Causing souls to decay faster, that one?
Yeah. So presumably, the problem with identity contamination is that you are shoving other people's pieces from other people's souls into your body, and those pieces come with those people's identities.
Yeah, right.
And so you get the power, but you don't. But it's not the same as you having the power in the first place. How does compounding work? Okay, let's take Miles.
Yep.
For example, he's double gold. So you are storing health into your metal mind, and then you are burning that metal mind. So you are essentially opening up a channel for preservation's power, and then preservation's power is like flooding through the metal mind. But in that metal mind, there's now health. And it's not just health, it is health coded with your identity.
Sure. Yeah.
And so all of that healing power with your identity is flooding into you, and then you are cycling that right back into the metal mind.
Sure, because you can restore what you burned. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or into a different metal mind, whatever.
And so, well, what happens if you were just a gold allomancer and you had gotten the healing from someone else?
Sure.
You would get the identity along with that healing. And so when preservation's power floods through the metal mind, presumably, and I mean, like, we are hand waving a lot here, but like, presumably it would amplify, like, the thing that you get back would still have that other person's identity.
I don't,
and would not be accessible to you.
I don't think the logic tracks 100% there, because if that were the case, you wouldn't be able to access the power you stored in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that power is accessible to you. And I don't know why preservation giving you extra power would make that identity stronger. That just seems like kind of an arbitrary.
I disagree with that.
Why would that
Because I think so you get the healing from someone else. When you are storing healing, yes, you are using that power, but you are storing your own health in there, like without compounding. And so you have access to it. But the bonus freebie that you get from preservation goes through that person, or through their identity, rather, not themselves.
But why wouldn't it be colored by the fact that the identity it was being directly, amplified by? The template that it's being used is stuff that you stored that you can access. Like, it doesn't like, you can make an argument, but it doesn't like seem to me like it must be this way. It just seems to me like it's a relatively arbitrary restriction that exists now.
My model would be slightly different. Hopefully, I'm not just saying the same thing slightly differently. But
That's what I do on the show anyway.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if you gained Ferrochemy from another person, and you're storing that ability, I'm almost wondering if that metal mind is colored with that dead person's identity. And like, because you have it locked into you, you can access, like you can do Ferrochemy onto that. Like you have enough identity to do that potentially. And maybe that identity, just like you need the identities to match you, like your allomancy part and your Ferrochemy part, in order for compounding to work, for you to feel like, say, allomantically, right? You're feeling the connection to the metals in you, right? And compounding only would work if those identities matched, right? So the ferrochemical storage was yours, right? Because we know if Vin ate someone else's metal mind, it's just, it feels inaccessible potentially.
She can sense that there is power there, but
she
there's
can't
nothing she
open
can
it.
do with it.
So like maybe that's what's happening. Maybe
It's kind of what I was saying, yeah. And so ultimately, I don't think it is important for us to get to the right answer, but like identity contamination feels like something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
Your elementic power and your ferrochemical power, whether one of them is natural to you and the other one is granted through Hemalurgy, or whether both of them are granted through Hemalurgy, they are not compatible. And so you can't compound in the current age.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is to lead to, why was it possible before? Why can Marsh do this thing? That's what got me thinking about like souls decaying that we were told about earlier. And so I was thinking, well, what if one part of the soul decay is the identity getting filed off?
Could be. Like that's something that isn't retained as strongly because Ruin is.
Ruin is not pushing against the fabric of Scadrial as much. Souls are not decaying as hard. Identity is retained either
More
indefinitely
strongly
or for
than it
much
was
longer.
before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I mean that's possible. Part of me is part of the way I read it was just potentially that like with Ruin Ascendant, his magic was also like expressed more strongly too, and so it was just capable of more, you know, and it kind of could bust past barriers that might stop a kind of a lower juice system. But like it's interesting. I'm curious. I don't know if this is just kind of like a curio that Brandon is kind of like throwing out there, the Ars Arcanum, if it's something that we're going to learn a lot more about at some point.
I guess I'm just like, I don't see why Brandon would put this in here if like it wasn't like a thing that, because like he didn't need to put this part. This is not critical information for this book, right?
None of this is like none of the Ars Arcana are.
Well, yeah, but like sometimes they like refer to things that are like in the book, right? That happened during the book, right?
Sure, they go back and like clarify
which
things,
like this isn't at all about that.
But in my like partially for me, you can read this like Brandon needs to explain why for people who are reading the book going, the set should have been making compounders.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fair.
They go, okay, well, I guess there's a reason for that now. And so part of me wonders if this is like, here's my explanations, folks, and like this is as far as we're gonna go with it.
Sure,
you know,
it's interesting just that a lot of the Hemalurgy presumed dangers are all era 2 Ars Arcanum, because we first got this like, wow, Hemalurgy is kind of dangerous in like Alloy's Ars Arcanum, so it's kind of funny.
I am just on a very small tangent that I will not get into because I don't have any coherent thoughts about.
Great.
But like all of this conversation about identity contamination and identity in general has gotten me thinking about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter again.
We painted the night.
Sure. Where identity was also like a big it played a big role into how like the Shroud was formed and all of that. So I think the next time we have an opportunity to ask Brandon a question, or at least I have an opportunity to ask Brandon a question, I might go like, hey, Brandon, let's talk about identity. Like, tell me about identity.
Can you tell us about the identity field?
Identity field.
We need the identity field. Put it in the comments if you remember us blabbing about that on one episode several years ago at this stage. Nice.
Shout out to Ian.
Shout out to Ian. I also find it interesting that Chris thinks this is beyond the conscious abilities of a shard to do.
It is interesting because I feel like what we've gotten more recently are examples of shards consciously limiting their magic systems. You know, when we like talk about some of the stuff from Rhythm of War and Honor,
Stone
like
shaping.
foreclosing certain powers.
Yes.
But this is like kind of different.
Well, it just brings me back to like Sazed changing snapping, right? Like he chose to do that, presumably, as far as we know.
There's also, I think, precedent for shards being able to do more than they should, like around the moment of their ascension.
Sure, I guess I'm like, what mechanically can a shard change about their magic? Which has always been a really open question to me.
Yeah.
Like if Sazed can change snapping and Honor can limit stone shaping, like that's very interesting. Certainly it's quite interesting that like this pressure Ruin's exerting was a very specific case that like Ruin's trapped and so was like really pressing on it that like Harmony would never need to do that, right? Like there would be no reason to do that. But it's, I don't know, it's just interesting that a shard could not do this, at least in Chris's opinion.
There's maybe something to be said about the fact that this has like something to do with how the magic is initiated and how, you know, it's so core to like that's usually the part that's actually tied back to the shard's intent, you know? And so maybe that's something that they actually do have a little less wiggle room with than they might other parts of what the magic system can or cannot do, like what the powers do, as opposed to like how you access the magic. Maybe that's harder to tinker with for them.
But wouldn't you say snapping's an initiation?
I am, and so that's why I'm saying like this happened, but Sazed couldn't have done it himself. Something bigger had to shift for this. He couldn't have consciously been like, I want snapping to be easier, but this is like in some ways more extreme than something that he would normally be able to do, if that makes any sense. Like shards can control powers, Honor can limit stone shaping, but Honor can't mess with that. You have to bond a spren. It's harder for him to do that. Preservation could make it. Maybe he could be like, I don't want them to have speed bubbles anymore. I want them to do something else. But it would be harder for him to change snapping, you know. And so this is something that like kind of wouldn't be able to ordinarily happen, but because this tide has shifted, something has changed with the dynamics of the shards.
Yeah. So
a natural shift has occurred.
You're saying initiation is more controllable by the shard than the powers.
I'm saying the
opposite. Yeah, the opposite.
Damn it.
The opposite.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So sorry. Yes. Initiation is less.
Yes.
In control. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying Sazed he can't make Allomancy just not have snapping, but he could just tinker it very slightly because he doesn't have total control over it? Maybe?
Sorry, the corollary to this is that maybe it wasn't super conscious on his part.
With snapping, I mean, that's definitely possible.
That's
sure.
what I'm reading. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He is now a more balanced shard, and so snapping becomes more balanced.
Mm-hmm. I guess the Wob said that like Sazed was horrified by it, so like I feel like there's some intention there, but like that doesn't need to be the case, right? So like we don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely possible. But I do like the idea that shards can adjust like sort of the outputs more than like some of these core fundamentals. Like I would agree with that. The only way a shard could mess with those core fundamentals is like with super direct intervention on a specific person rather than like a generic invested art type thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
the magic system comes with, here's how you get access to the power.
Yeah.
And that is blanket true unless the shard individually intervene. Like unless the shard says, no, power. I'm not going to give you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then to undermine my own point, I also believe that they changed Surge Binding to make the oaths important. So,
right. Well, I do believe that is true, right?
Yeah, though it's tough to say, but that was just me spitballing.
ultimately, I think the extent a shard can manipulate these things with invested arts is very interesting, and I want to know more about it, right? Because what things can they do? What things can they not do? Because it's totally unclear to me.
What defines a magic system?
What is an invested art? Yeah.
Oh, Brandon will never give it. That will be like, he's like, oh, it's a total gradation, like what you might call, like, you know, between an arcana and in a true invested art. Like that'll be one of his things where he's like, people like to put things in boxes, and they'll be like, yeah.
Well, yeah. I am people.
Yeah. Well, you know, like every scientist, and then you're a biologist, and then you're sad because you can't put things into boxes.
Which
much harder.
Brings me back to thinking how miserable the life of a Cosmere scientist or arcanist must be, where at any point a shard can be, hey, I'm just going to put these 12 moons in an orbit that doesn't make sense. Screw you.
Aiden Alcium wanted it to be true. Okay. Cool. So I think that's the Ars Arcanum. I think that this episode's going exactly how I expected, with those two things being most of the episode. But I do think we need to talk about Trellium at least a bit, because Trellium's weird. Like really weird. It's super overpowered, actually.
So what do we know about Trellium? Like, we know that Bleeder,
yes,
was at the very least able to gain ferrochemical speed.
Yes.
And allomantic steel, right?
Yeah, any power she displayed, she was using a Trellium spike for.
Yeah, and only one spike at a time.
Yeah,
only one.
Yes.
I still love the image of her ripping out her spike and then falling onto another
becoming
spike,
goo,
like every time. Like, how annoying that must have been.
Well, yeah, because I'm like, how? Yeah, I guess you'd have to do something like that unless.
No, that's literally what they say in the book. Like, they're like, she must just be falling on.
Oh, really? I think I forgot that.
Yeah. She puts the. I mean, like, she doesn't have to be like get pierced because she's Miss Wraith goo, right?
Yeah.
But she puts the spike on the ground, rips the other one.
How did I totally not remember this? That's crazy.
But yeah, apparently you can steal, at the very least, any metal-born power with Trellium. Maybe you can't steal like attributes,
like,
right?
Maybe that
and
latent
trait.
preservation that could make sense potentially. Hard to say.
ATM steals any power. Lerasium steals all abilities.
I was on that episode and I still have no idea what that means. I still am so unclear on what the difference is. But it's all good.
I like doing episodes 5 years later. And it's like, still totally a mystery. No additional information at all in any way. It's like, oh, good.
Page Runner did ask for a clarification on exactly that. But
we don't need to get into it.
I just still have so much trouble remembering or understanding, even after we've clarified.
Trellium also just magically hides you from Harmony. Okay, cool. But like that, at least I can buy as like a god metal-y thing where like normally Harmony could like see somewhat and like feel the spikes or something, and another god metal like interferes with that process. I don't have an issue with that.
That drives with me.
Yeah, and I will say too, it seems to prevent Harmony from taking over a person as well, because the limit of spikes that they had listed was like, I believe 3. And then we see at least several people with more than 3 spikes, but several of them are Trellium.
Yeah,
at least
he can't take over Bleeder when she has one normal, one
Trellium. Yeah,
one Trellium.
Yeah, and he can't take over. Like, for instance, the one I'm thinking of is Dumad, who has at least 4 powers.
At least 4. Yeah. I think he needs to have like, he might be like a natural either coin shot or
probably a natural
seeker.
Coin shot.
And then all of the, well, he's also really good at, because like he can sense.
And how many does Telsin have? She like says she's got a ton.
I didn't think it was that high.
She's got iron and steel. She's got like
healing.
Got the healing one. She's got her wakefulness. She's got the one she displayed in alloy, unless she took in bands, unless she took them out. She's a leecher.
She's a leecher. Yeah, I don't think she has wakefulness. I don't think that's one that
she had something. I can't remember what it was, but she's got a lot. Like, she's got quite a few spikes.
Yeah. Oh, what's that line from the was it from Edwin about someone else paying the price?
Oh yeah, we still don't understand that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, yeah, he was saying like we don't know how to like that was the downside of their spikes is he was like, like even though we've figured out how to have someone bear the cost, it's not as good. Like they're limited the number of powers they can have, unlike the bands, I think.
Sure. That was a weird line.
That was a weird line. Yeah. Another one we have no clarity on. Eric, you totally puzzled.
I thought the whole point with the end of Shadows of Self was shooting a second spike so Harmony could control Bleeder. Wasn't that the entire point?
Yes, that was one of the OG spikes though, right? So Bleeder has one Harmony spike and one autonomous spike. And because she only has one Harmony spike, that's not enough for Harmony to take control over her.
Wait,
but then Wax shoots a second one.
No, that's not true.
No. She only has one spike at any point.
Absolutely only has one spike.
No, my point, Eric, is that I don't think that you need that it prevents you from ever being, but you can use these to get above the limit. And so for Bleeder, one spike was enough for Harmony to at least kind of like he was trying to get back in there. He was trying to be able to push his way through.
Sure.
But you can have these humans have what should be 5 or 6 powers above the confirmed number that Harmony should be able to control them, and he can't. So clearly they must confer some sort of resistance.
Sure. That I absolutely agree. It also theoretically possible that like Sazed's blindness doesn't help during Lost Metal. Like he maybe in another time he would have been able to control them easier potentially.
But it makes sense to me as a power of a metal that is from a shard about you being autonomous, that it would help you keep your autonomy from other beings.
Yeah. Some conferring some resistance. Sure.
I could see that, but I don't like it. I don't think an honor spike would in any way make you either more honorable or like more likely to stick to promises or anything like that.
That's not what I'm saying though. It's not impacting your personality. It's just a little benefit to the power, And so maybe there's a way that honor would play into that, but it's not like I'm saying that you become, I am an independent man because I've got an autonomy spike. It's just changed.
Sure, that'd be pretty funny though. I still don't like. I think it's just, hey, it's a different shard. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with your magic.
Well, sometimes things are thematic too, as opposed to being like necessarily that there's an effect there. It's just something that
I can accept a thematic thing. Yeah,
certainly. Palm definitely said lots of things that were very autonomy-y. And it is an open question how much Palm talked with Autonomy or Trell. Or I guess it'd have to be Trell because Autonomy didn't directly talk to people.
I guess.
There's open questions with how much she knew and didn't know. Yeah. And she's also going insane from having one spike, right? So...
yeah,
it may be that Autonomy, like Bavadin, was able to speak to her.
Sure. Yeah.
When she, but like how did she get the first spike in the first place?
Right, Mistborn Secret 2. It's your history too, Brandon. Just do it. There's too many remaining questions.
I mean, and with like Bloody Tan, right? Because Brandon raffoed me on Bloody Tan, right? For some reason.
Was he spiked? He does say that he's met like death and the survivor.
We'll never know. We'll never know that one.
God. Why did he raffle me? There could be something that like if you are like acting in accordance with a shard, that maybe it's easier for a shard to talk to you or something. Maybe something like that. Like it kind of. I don't think this is the exact same thing, but like kind of how Ruin's able to talk to someone without a spike.
Well, I mean, Bleeder had spikes too, though. So like, I just think that Autonomy would be able to reach out to her potentially. You know what I mean?
Potentially, yeah.
If you wanted, I don't think it's like out of the question. If you've got 2 spikes, there's enough of a gap there.
Yeah.
Or somehow she stumbled upon Trellium first, and then she got that, and then she was like, oh. Okay.
Yeah, there's some there's some open questions after Wax shoots her in the face. between the second time Wax shoots her in the face.
I am curious how, at one point, Marcy refers to Trellium as being an off-world metal, which certainly could be true. But I am kind of curious where it comes from. Like, will there be enough? Like, will they find more on Scadrial, or will this just be kind of a curiosity that they've got a handful of examples of these spikes, but there's not really any, like, they can't really get any more.
I don't think there's like a pool of that. I think now that Autonomy seems to have withdrawn from Scadrial, I don't think there will be any new Trellium unless Autonomy comes back.
That I agree with.
Because so you'd think Marcy's wrong and it's not a metal from another world where it's like, man,
I don't think it's a metal from another world. I think it's Autonomy, like essentially pushing investiture, like mini investing into Scadrial, and that like pushing investiture into Scadrial, and that investiture manifests as a metal. And now that she's no longer doing that.
So you think there was probably like some sort of temporary mini pits or like an equivalent?
Something
or
like,
do you think she just like created a discrete amount and like
she
was like, I'm investing on Scadrial, I'm doing this.
One of the two of those. I think Marasi's maybe not talking precisely. It's just like this came from something that is not of Scadrial, right?
Oh, for sure. It's like it's an uninformed opinion. She just knows it's an off-world god. But when she said that, I'd always kind of assumed it was Scadrial, and then I was like, well, I mean, you know, there's naturally occurring metals of gods on their home worlds too.
What if they brought it from, you know,
Taldane?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an open question how that initial stuff happened at all, and how they reached out to this Trell thing, and like there's a lot of open questions there, but I think there was enough Trellium that they probably didn't like literally lead it through the perpendicularity, right? Like I think there's
maybe they were all pretty small spikes. Like it wouldn't have been that much, you know.
Yeah, you need like a small box, right?
I guess I'm just reminded a bit of how like the Inquisitors couldn't go into the pool with, you know, like Hemalurgy couldn't go into the pool,
spikes,
but preservation.
But they were ruin and preservation specifically. Like,
these wouldn't have to be charged yet. They would just be a god. Could you take a god metal through another shard's perpendicularity?
That's right.
That's really the question.
Yeah, but that's kind of the question I'm having, right?
I feel like probably.
Because I feel like we've discussed that maybe Autonomy's investiture couldn't go through the perperpendicularity, which is why they needed pure door. So
the matter form, the physical form.
That is a valid point, because the physical form does interact quite differently for sure. Yeah.
And there's also the question of whether we think that Trellium is different from Bavadinium. Which there's a sentence in the Lost Metal where it says it is like blah 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 Trellium. Oh, I suppose I should be calling it Bavadinium.
And we'll see if you keep doing that, Zayd, because until you do, we're gonna stick with Trellium.
So I think it's an interesting conversation on whether god metals manifested differently, like because uninvested art is the interaction between a shard and a planet. So do you get a different god metal on like each planet, or is it just this shard's metal is always the same?
I think that shard's metal is always the same.
I think I'm leaning that direction as well.
I think of if there's any shard where there's some weirdness, Autonomy and the avatars could allow for some weirdness in some respects, because like how separated is that investiture from the core of Autonomy? Like, I think there is possible room for that to be different, but I think Atium would be the same everywhere, even if Ruin went to some other
and I think avatars are still Autonomy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So like, and
shard flavor, right? But it is interesting. Trellium can steal so many things. That's super great. So
yeah. Why do you need Atium at all?
Yeah. Especially when you need to refine it. Hey. Well,
okay. Here's the benefit, and this is actually the cost of Trellium: is you can't melt or forge it at all, and so there's not any Trellium alloys or anything you can do in that way.
Oh,
But ATM is more flexible, and you can have all these ATM alloys, and
Yeah, but
presumably
they're all inferior to ATM itself.
maybe, but like it's useful in other ways. You know what I mean? Like it may not be hemalurgically better, but like ATM is more flexible, at least as we understand it. And I mean, I guess I still don't understand powers versus abilities, so maybe you could get something cool with an ATM alloy. You know what I mean? Like, couldn't tell you.
yeah.
I think any ATM alloy is like a subset of ATM. Like
Yeah,
I can't think of any way that you mix ATM with something else and you get something that ATM by itself doesn't provide.
Sure.
Well, but like fluoraceum seems to steal something that ATM can't provide.
But fluoraceum is a completely different god metal, right?
I guess if you think it's like an absolute umbrella of stuff, I think it's possible that you could do something interesting with it. And or maybe you ally with another god metal, which you can't do with which you can't appear to do with autonomy anyway, because it won't melt. So
That's
but you
really
can-
interesting. It won't melt.
Yeah. What if fluoraceum will melt, or if ATM's a weird one? No, you can make alloys, because we know you can make alloys. As Brandon said, you can.
If you can't forge Trellium, that does to me provide some credence to autonomy literally created these spikes.
Yeah, like if
Right.
you can't physically manipulate the object, then
It's not like there's some mini pits. You take it, refine it, and turn it into a spike, right? So, like, I think, yeah, that seems more plausible to me.
unless like its melting temperature is higher than what Wax can accomplish with like his electric heater and whatever.
I guess the impression I got from that chapter though was that this thing is physically unable to melt because of the like it's not of this world. This is a supernatural characteristic of this god metal.
I agree.
This is just making me think about god metals. It's like, can you make atium if you can melt and forge it into a thing? Is there a theoretical temperature where you could make it into a gas? Things like that, right? That you could do in the really weird high end, and like which god metals could, which god metals couldn't, and I don't think we're gonna get any answers to any of that ever. No.
I think this is going to be very on demand kind of.
Yes. When we need a character to have only one spike but lots of different things and be able to hide from Harmony, then a god metal did it to make the plot work. True.
Thanks, autonomy.
Thanks, autonomy.
But it worked pretty well. It worked. It was a cool thing.
Oh, I love Shadows of Self. Love Palm. She's the best. Other final hemalurgy thoughts, things?
I would say I'm curious. Maybe it's just like the most specific thing I want to say. Like we've got these secret groups that know about hemalurgy, and the Ghost Bloods are gonna keep on it. If the set exists at all, they're gonna keep on it, or whatever. That they provide spikes to the university, and like the university seem aware of hemalurgy now, and I'm curious where that's gonna go, because there's not been an opportunity for this knowledge to go broad before. It was, a really limited pool, and then it almost went extinct if not for Spook and Kelsier. And now it's like entering like academia potentially. And I'm curious if it will become a thing that people know about, or if it will continue to be a secret project and it will just be like a governmental thing now too. And that will be where it goes.
I don't think information like that stays secret for too long. I think by Era 4, we have spikes everywhere.
Oh, for sure. I'm just thinking about like specifically like what's next. Like where are we in the like the short term? Like I do think spikes are going to become pretty commonplace. But I'm just curious. Like, are you going to be majoring in hemalurgy, or will this be a thing that they like? This is maybe not majoring, but like how accessible will this knowledge be the next time we see it?
It definitely makes me wonder if Harmony would try and use some agents to try and restrict that information somewhat, potentially, at the university, but probably not.
Doesn't sound like him.
Yeah, it'd be tough to say, but yeah, like that's the sort of thing. It's like, will people be like murdered to create spikes in the future, and it'll just be like a crime that occurs? Will there be people who want to donate spikes at the end of their lives? Like, will this be a part of society, or will it not be yet?
Yeah,
I think we are definitely heading in a direction where there are ethical uses of hemalurgy. And I don't know whether that looks like hemalurgy is a little bit like donating blood, right? Where every now and then, or maybe once in your life, or maybe at the end of your life, you go and like you give a little bit of your investiture.
Sure. I think the organ donating example is very apt. Like that could definitely be a thing. Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. It does seem like long term, not what's next, but is spikes being very common, because why would Chris be putting like Hemalurgy is perceived dangerous to the Cosmere if like we don't get that eventually, you know?
I'm still a little unclear on like, is compounding just like her? I guess she's just worried about people mixing powers that she doesn't think should be mixed. Like that's what it is at the end of the day, right? I'm kind of curious, like what she sees. She talks about Hemalurgy like it's a Dawn shard, in my opinion, you know. And I'm just like, what is the end state she is so afraid to see?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
At the end of the day, like you're not, creating gods or anything like that, especially not without compounding.
I don't know, like giving anyone double gold is like, it's pretty good.
But that's a double, like that's a compounding problem again.
Sure. But like,
and she calls that out as a roadblock. Like she says, if they rediscover compounding, that will like that's a thing she's worried about. That'll be another step down the path that she's worried about.
I guess I'm worried about non-Scadrian magics intermixing with the Scadrian magics, and maybe that having some totally different overpowered compounding-ish effects potentially. I don't know how that would work, but
identity contamination is probably still like just as much of a factor.
Sure, but
if
like
not more.
If that can be like, I think this is the thing that she fears, right? That if that roadblock could be removed, who knows what sort of chaos could be wrought across the Cosmere potentially, right? Could you stone shape so much to get past honor restrictions? Like there's clearly some very powerful abilities that might have been restricted that might not need to be,
or give yourself a power that allows you to like circumvent some shardic restriction.
Yeah, like it's hard to say, but I feel like it's that sort of mixing that she's afraid of. Yeah, if someone discovers how to do that, that's going to be really bad.
In a way, that's what I am most excited about. So yes, the future of Scadrial is going to be very interesting, and I would love to see that. But I also want to see like the expansion of powers throughout the Cosmere, right? You end up with, you pick and choose powers from any world and grant them to any world, and like,
yeah, right, sure, yeah, exactly. I mean, if they can code abilities, Scadrian abilities with these spikes, there's nothing to say that you couldn't do that somewhere else, especially if you have a friendly shard helping you potentially, right? To know where to bind it. I don't think it would be so hard to figure out how to code it and where to stab the spikes without a shard, I feel like, but hey.
Yeah, you would kind of need to have like met the Scadrians and like learned what Hemalurgy was to even like start doing that if you did.
I mean, at some point, maybe it just becomes science, right? You have the right tools, the right fabrials, if you will, to like read a spirit web and identify, this shape,
sure.
It represents this shape. Yeah.
I mean, as soon as Taravangian knows about Hemalurgy, there's going to be a massive Hemalurgy operation to figure out how to do that.
No, it's the exact sort of thing.
I hate it.
Yeah, he's practicing the Hemalurgy of Rashar right now with it, or at least he was. So it's right up his alley.
Yeah, he's like, of course I'll do this.
Lives for power.
Yeah, I have the intent ready to go.
Yeah. Terrifying.
Cool. Let's head on over to Who's That Cosmere Character?
This character is from Roshar.
Menace, Tien,
Tom,
Braze,
Void in drag on a horse.
It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character? Caw. Welcome to Who's That Cosmere Character, the game show where we send 5 clues in a character to wtcc at 17shard.com. I read each clue aloud, and after each clue, these guys have a chance to guess who's that Cosmere character. And evidently, this is Evgeni and David going head to head here, because this is a 3-person Shardcast, and we still went this long. What a surprise! We do this off record anyway. Honestly, like. We had an hour conversation about something else that wasn't related to anything.
Yeah. I think our duration is not a function of the size, the cast of the size of the cast.
It's just, very true.
It's just a constant.
All right. Cool. This one comes from Silver Swift.
Silver Swift.
And clue 1, this character has good aim.
Silence.
It's not silence. What'd you guess, David?
I guessed Teleb.
It is not Taleb. I like that. That's good. I like that. The great thing with just two of you, we just get to go. That's
Right.
good. Yeah.
Super snappy.
Super snappy. This character has killed a member of the nobility.
Kelsier.
It is not Kelsey.
Vin.
It's not Finn. Clue 3. This character sees things others do not.
Wax.
It's not Wax.
Okay. Sees things others do not. Has killed a member of the nobility. What was the first one?
Good
The other
aim.
one. Good aim. Oh, how about Miles?
It's not Miles.
Damn, I think he does fit though.
And I don't think it fits clue 4. Clue 4. This character has 6 children.
Holy crap.
It's a lot
Okay.
of children.
trying to think. Okay, how many children does Keen have? I'm going to say Keen because I'm worried it fits. Keen?
No,
It's not Keen.
enough. No, he's got 4.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay, I was trying to think of who has a lot of kids. There's not that many families. Most of them are like a nuclear family.
Wow, 6 children?
6 kids.
But if ours only had 4.
Wow.
Oh.
And
Mm.
Shalon went on a murder spree and eliminated some.
I've got it. I actually, no, they had 5, didn't they? Because she had 4 brothers.
Yeah.
No,
No, 3
Hell
brothers.
ran 4.
No, she had 3 now.
Just
She had,
Wickham and Helleran.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God. Wickham.
And
yeah.
Balat. And Balat.
And Balat.
yeah.
Too many people there. That's why Shalon had to cut the flock down a little bit.
They're like,
It's a lot of names for the readers to remember.
Yes.
Let's
and it didn't help that they all changed the first part of their names after that too.
It's true.
well, because it's rank, right?
Yeah.
But it did not help when you're like, wait, I thought you're non-Balat, but then you
That's
were
not your
Asha
name?
Balat
Okay,
or whatever.
yeah.
You know, like
Yeah. All right, Evgeni, what do you got?
I don't. Who has 6 children in the? That's a
I
lot
could
of
think of
children.
someone else who has a lot of children, but I also don't think it's him.
Okay.
I'm like Tindwo has a lot, but she doesn't fit any other clues.
And I don't think we know it's 6. Like I feel like that somebody has 6 kids. Like that's a fact, not like they've got a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the Stormfather because he made 10 honor spren after whatever.
Well, Daedalin only had 4 kids.
Good old bring up Ridger. Who's that Cosmere
Yeah,
character?
the
Classic.
The sibling that everyone forgets about, the king of Idris. King Idris himself.
King Idris
Jr.
himself.
Idris Jr.
I love this show. This is good.
6.
I don't know, Evgeni. I think we got to make it snappy.
Yeah, I know. I'm just running through the Cosmere worlds real quick.
Okay.
Oh, just all through all the Cosmere worlds real quick.
Shraff Venture.
It's not Straff. Clue 5. This character is not allowed to use weapons.
What?
That's not helpful at all. Clue 5.
Yeah, that's man.
Really?
Well, this is very good. Who's that Cosmere character?
I think this is actually really good because I think this uniquely identifies this person.
Is it Hoyd?
Nope, it's not
No.
Hoyd.
I had no idea, and I was like, I know he can't use weapons.
Who is not allowed to use weapons? Like it's not an Alethi thing necessarily because they are swords versus spears type of thing.
Oh, I know who this is. I bet. I would guess that would have been better than Hoyd, but
Okay,
oh well.
okay. I'll let you guess it once Evgeni guesses it because there's the disadvantage is you have less guesses to go through overall, right? With this,
Yeah. You eliminate fewer characters.
Yeah. Oh, this is like obvious now. I'm fucking mad that I just threw my guess away on Hoyd because I was being dumb. Oh well.
You can have it.
Okay,
You sure? I think
Yeah.
it's Rock.
it is
right?
Rock.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that all fits. That I think that's pretty good.
No, that's good. He's got a lot of kids, and you forget because
6,
like some of them are much more. Yeah, some of them are really prominent. Like Gift, Song. There's like other Rock.
Yep.
There's like he has 6 children
I
for
don't know.
sure.
Go to this
I
Coppermind
can-
article and count
I
them.
can probably go up to 4.
Yeah. One of them. Yeah, there's a couple juniors in there. One of them is Beautiful Song.
Gift
Yeah.
Cord, Rock, Star, and then Kumatiki.
You forgot about
Song.
Star and Kumatiki.
How could we forget about Kumatiki?
How you fell into the classic blunder.
One of the classic blunder.
All right, cool. This next one is sent by Ashes AE. Clue 1. This character is a POV character.
Moash.
Not Moash. Get
Boyd.
eliminating stuff.
Hoyt.
It is Hoyd. Congratulations, David.
What? That's cheating. It's never Hoyd.
Oh,
You're not allowed to submit main characters. You only have to.
I don't know. You know,
When you
I
say
think I like
Kumatiki.
it. I like
Yeah,
it when
one of
it's
the
just POV character and you just luck into it, you know. So sorry, Ashes AE, but David
That's fine.
had
Give
Hoyd
us
on the
the other
brain.
clues.
Clue
I
2
did.
was this character can read. Clue 3, this character
Okay.
is invested.
That's allowed.
Clue 4, this character is old. And clue 5, this character goes by multiple names.
Okay. I think that's a little too vague, but apparently you can.
I
At
could,
least
I
gets you, like,
connected to
Basher.
it in the spiritual realm. I could discern the truth.
True, you did.
Okay. That's
All right.
allowed.
All right. So now let's end with our Who's That Cosmere character priority queue. You, for as little as $10 a month or more, I guess, if you want, you can support us on our highest tier on Patreon and send in priority queue things. And we get to them when we record eventually. So it's faster than the other one.
highly
That's
coveted
just like
sir.
the normal one.
Yes,
we get to
but-
it when we record, but slightly faster.
We do get through it slightly faster. I'm good at this.
Less competition.
Yes, a lot
True.
less competition. So this one is from Charlie C. And clue 1 is this character enjoys drink.
Enjoys drink.
Enjoys drink.
There's no like a drink.
I think like enjoys getting drunk.
But I believe
Yeah.
that is the most sensible reading to this.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of I'm trying to pick a minor character and I can't remember his name.
You can uniquely describe a person, then that's
He is
acceptable.
One
He is-
of.
The Huntmaster of Dalinar and Dalinar's
I was gonna guess the same. the one with the hat.
Yeah, on the hat. Yeah.
Isn't
That's a
that
guess.
Bastion?
Bastion. I was
Yeah,
going
it's
for Bastion,
Bastion.
but I couldn't remember. It was
No.
Bass something. That's our joint guess.
Okay, it's not Bastion, but I like
Damn
that.
it.
That's really funny to me.
I thought we had him.
And I'm like, I know who that is. That's Bastion. I remember that name.
We need a medium obscure character who likes to drink. One of Dalinar's drinking buddies.
Right.
Oh yeah, because in a flashback, he drank with them.
They
and
were
that
in
was
the
that-
and like Dalinar like broke a guy's back
Yeah,
when he got drunk.
yeah.
Good
That's right.
times.
Good times. Dalinar's not like
Felt
it
was
this days.
there.
Yeah, Felt was
Yeah.
there. That's true. Right. Clue 2. Right. There's no more guesses. I just need to go to the next one. Clue 2. This character is a member of the ruling class.
Dalinar.
It's not Dalinar.
Oh.
That's fair. That's a fair
What
guess.
about-
though.
What about his nephew, Elhokar?
It is not Elhokar.
He's known to enjoy drink at times. Okay.
Yep. Clue 3. This character is more than they first appear.
Elend.
It is not Elend. Does he like drinking?
He was drinking when Vin first met him.
Well,
I think like it's kind of an archaic usage of it, but I feel like when someone says like they enjoy drink, like that's kind of like that's one of the things they're known for. Like they're a partier.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just how the connotation I get from it.
Hmm.
Okay, so nobility enjoys drink. And is that it? Was that the other clues?
this character is more than they first appear.
More than they first appeared. I kind of want to guess Kliss, but I can't remember if she likes drink or not. I'll just go for it. Kliss.
It's not Kliss.
Okay.
Clue 4, this character is not invested.
Oh well, that would have ruled her out too. Damn it.
She could be a secret Allomancer. You don't know.
Well, she is. So
Okay.
she's ruled out. Yeah.
Because she was
I totally forgot that.
Yeah.
she was one of the emotional ones, right?
Yeah, she was a
Oh.
soother.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Kliss, man. Kliss. Well, that eliminates Breeze.
Yep.
No, let's go back to Roshar. That's not her name. Hold up. I was gonna guess Iato, and that's not the character I was thinking of.
Okay.
Eli.
Oh, I was really about to guess Eli.
Dude.
I was like, she had that whole scene where she's like, "Look at all my wine, Shalon."
You're
vibing.
That's funny.
yeah, okay. It's not Ile.
God damn.
I'll let David do a guess though. That's not a joint
Okay.
guess.
Yeah.
That's
What?
fair,
Okay.
that's
What's our? What are the clues again? I forgot already. All right.
This character enjoys drink, member of the ruling class, is more than they first appear, and is not invested.
Sabariel.
It is Sabariel. Hey, David,
Sweet.
3 for 3, David. The
I don't
PB
think I've won in a while, so I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. And
It's okay. I'm here to drink and not know things.
There you go.
look, you two are just here to vibe on this exact same wavelength, except
Yeah,
Evgeni
we're
when
funny.
it actually matters to get the correct one.
Well,
You went to lose some.
Clue 5 was this character spends battles in a tent.
okay.
Yeah. That's a good one. I like that one.
It was a good one.
I wonder if Polona would have fit all of these. Presumably,
She's not really a member of the ruling class, though.
No,
she's got
yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah, I guess.
don't think
Yeah,
so.
she's more like.
She's
not a-
effectively, but she's like, I think if you were to like make an argument, it's only like,
yeah, she's dark eyed and like.
Yeah.
And they're not married, which is
Mhm.
notable.
maybe that'll happen in book 5. That's the
Who-
subplot we're waiting on. Is when are
Sabariel.
Sabariel and Polona gonna get married finally?
Nice.
Day 9.
The marriage that we really care about.
Yeah.
You don't know, but there's a
Sabariel.
whole big Sabariel subplot. You know, he really has his time in the sun. Maybe I
No,
don't know.
Adolin.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adolin
When-
dies. Yeah, he dies.
When Dalinar becomes fused Dalinar, and Sabariel has to rise and battle him in the back 5.
Ooh. No one saw that coming.
Old man Sabariel, like, I'll get you. All right. We hope you enjoyed this chaotic episode. You can find us on 17shard.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun. We got Discord. It's hopping. We got a lot of people. You can find us on Facebook, the place formerly known as Twitter, SoundCloud,
X.
YouTube.
You can
X.
find us on X. we are technically on Blue Sky and Threads, but we're not posting there right now.
Yeah. You gotta reserve the name.
Yeah. So if you want to follow, like, Twitter's probably gonna die at some point. So
Yeah.
we gotta go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But Discord's the place. that's
Discord's
popping right
the
now.
place to be, I think. I think that's the number one place to be. And you can support our Patreon for as little as $1. There is art polls. Nice, good. I like the show and tell.
$1.
Yes. And if you did watch Secrets in Stained Glass, there's Secrets in Stained Glass stuff there too. That's exclusive, all for you. And there's outtakes, and I really need to edit more of those, but life is just an endless stream of me editing Shardcasts, so I'll get to that. But there are older outtakes if you want, and you can support for as little as $1. Wow.
I will say I am not like I watched like Dimension 20 and Critical Role and things like that. I didn't think I would be in Secret in Stained Glass because that didn't seem like my kind of thing. And not all of it was, but there were some things in there that I was really invested in and I really liked. So if you don't think it's gonna be your thing, it's like 20 hours of your time. Like you can that's manageably sacrificable. I think it's gonna be worth it.
No, it's more like 17 hours actuit's 17
I
hours.
round to like multiples of 10.
No. A lot of people have been saying that like the comment I got today was, this was absolutely spectacular. One of the most incredible fan works ever made in the Cosmere. So, you know, it's been pretty effusive. I'm a fan. But see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.
Call.